Chapter 982. Just as he walked out of the hall, he met Lei Jun. Lei Jun was stunned. Then he reported the situation with a bitter smile. In the past few days, countless people applied to buy buildings in Flame Dragon City. Originally, after Flame Dragon City was destroyed, Lord Devour helped rebuild it. However, because of the shadow of the previous destruction, very few people came to settle down. After so many years, there were only 20 or so people. Many houses, buildings, and shops in the city were empty. Now, Yi Qinghan had become the sovereign. Moreover, there was a sealed god valley below Flame Dragon City. Of course, countless wandering warriors and big and small families came to buy buildings, applying to become permanent residents in the city. In just a few days, the City Lord Mansion received millions of applications. A senior elder in the city calculated. There were about 10 million people who wanted to settle down in Flame Dragon City. That senior elder did not dare to make the decision, so he could only ask Lei Jun, a sovereign city, who did not want to come and settle down. Yi Qinghan's mouth revealed a cold smile, and he said indifferently, "Unless it's necessary, I don't want all of them." The buildings and shops in the space generally changed to restaurants and hotels. Flame Dragon City does not need that many permanent residents. Lei Jun nodded. He also expected that Yi Qinghan would definitely make such a decision. He was already very clear about Yi Qinghan's character. People who treated him well, he would treat you better. People who made him uncomfortable, he would make you even more uncomfortable. Uncle Lei Jun, you decide the city's matters. You don't need to ask me for everything. I believe in you. I will make a trip to soul-devouring city. Yi Qinghan smiled at Lei Jun. Lei Jun's character was without a doubt. He was a fierce man who could go to the Star Sea for fireworks alone. How could he allow sand to enter his eyes? After Yi Qinghan said that, he walked into a small hall. The small hall was not small, and it would not be crowded even if dozens of people sat down. However, when Yi Qinghan walked in, his eyes were dazzled. The small hall was filled with women. It was so beautiful that it dazzled people's eyes. No one knew what they were talking about, but they were all clamoring and laughing. The atmosphere was pretty good. Yi Qinghan paused with a guilty conscience, but countless eyes were already on him. Yi Qinghan had no choice but to be thick-skinned. He laughed and strode in. He waved his hand and said, hello everyone. What are you talking about?" It was fine if Yi Qinghan didn't speak, but once he did, countless resentful eyes shot towards him. Especially Yi Qingwu and Yin Ling. They were full of electricity, causing Yi Qinghan to tremble. The small hall was filled with beauties. Yu Qingcheng and Yao Ji sat at the head of the table. Their strength was not high, but they had the demeanor of a married woman. Venerable Yao Ji was powerful and had helped Yi Qinghan a lot. Not to mention her age, there was no doubt that she was sitting at the head of the table. On the left sat Yi Qingwu, Yi Yao Rao, Yi Qingyu, and Peach Blossom. On the right sat Fireworks, Yin Ling, Li Shui, and Flying Rain. Each of the women had their own features. If a country bumpkin came in and saw them, he would have lost his soul. "Brother, we're talking about your childhood." Yi Qingyu was the most innocent. She stood up and pulled Yi Qinghan's hand, giggling. Yi Qingyu indeed had the most right to speak about Yi Qinghan's childhood. Moreover, everyone was interested in this matter, and it was a good topic. The things that Yi Qinghan had done in the Flame Dragon continent were very legendary. Everyone was very interested in listening to him. What's there to talk about? Yeah, you guys keep talking. I'm going to the Soul Devourer City. Lord Devour asked me to go there. You guys should be happy. Yi Qinghan smiled and decided to use the old method to let them get to know each other. Of course, there was only one person they weren't familiar with. The Enchantress. As for the rest, they were still passable. "I'll go with you. Little Han, I haven't been to the Soul Devourer City for a long time. I miss it." The Enchantress looked dignified. Obviously, she controlled her aura to not be so bewitching. The most beautiful side of the Enchantress tribe was always reserved for her man. Even so, the faint charm in her bones couldn't be concealed no matter what. "Brother, I want to go too." "Me too." Except for Flying Rain, Peach Blossom, and Li Shui Air. Everyone wanted to follow. Obviously, these women didn't want to go to the Soul Devourer city to see the sea. They just wanted to follow Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan forced a smile and nodded. Okay, we'll go together. Didn't Lord Devourer say he wants to transform Xiaohei? Let's watch together. Shui Air, you don't want to go? All the women instantly revealed joyful expressions, and at the same time, they looked at Li Shuier and Xiaohei with indescribable expressions. Li Shuier was shy. She glared at Xiaohei and said, I'm not going. In a few days, I'll go back with my father. Xiaohei stood on Yi Qinghan's shoulder. He wasn't afraid of Li Shuier at all. Instead, he said proudly, He Shuier just stay at home. When I, Lord Xiaohei, become a handsome man, I'll go with my sister-in-law to your house to propose marriage. Li Shuier's pretty face instantly turned red. She glared at Xiaohei fiercely again and ran away shyly after throwing a sentence. You're so shameless. Who wants to marry you? Everybody burst out laughing. Firework blushed. Thinking about Yi Qinghan's promise, she said softly, Yi Qinghan, you guys go. I'm not going. I'll go with Sister Shuier. Seeing Firework running away with her blushing face, Yu Qingcheng and Yi Qingwu looked pensive. They looked at Yi Qinghan angrily. Yi Qinghan laughed, asking Yao Ji to take them to the teleportation formation. A white light sparkled on the soul-devouring city square. Several peerless beauties walked out of the teleportation formation, which bewildered thousands of guards. Seeing one or two beauties of this level was enough to make them dizzy. But now, there were several of them. However, when they saw the cyan figure in the middle of the group of beauties, their expressions instantly changed. The greed in their eyes immediately disappeared without a trace and was replaced by a face full of respect. They all knelt on one knee and shouted, Greetings, frigid Knight Sovereign. Greetings, young Master Xiaohei. Greetings, lords. Yi Qinghan waved his hand. Yao Ji used her soul consciousness to check. She found Lord Devourer's balcony, then led the others to teleport. Lord Devourer made an exception, standing up to greet them. He smiled and nodded to them. Eventually, his eyes fell on Xiaohei, smiling. Xiaohei, the soul-transforming grass is here. When do you want to transform it? Xiaohei's eyes brightened. He flew down from Yi Qinghan's shoulder, jumping on the table. Right now, I want to transform. I want to become a handsome man. This kid. Lord Devourer looked at Xiaohei lovingly, then smiled at Yi Qinghan. Little Han, you guys should take a walk in the city. We just need several hours. Yao Ji, you come with me? Yao Ji nodded. Xiaohei was the Soul Emperor's son. Finally, he was going to be an adult. It was normal for her to attend the ceremony. Yi Qinghan wasn't in a hurry. He just wanted to ask Lord Devourer some questions. Moreover, Lord Devourer had asked him to come here. At this moment, Xiaohei was going to transform. Shiyan was looking forward to it. Lord Devourer took Xiaohei and Yao Ji and teleported away. Lord Jiu stayed with the others and chatted on the balcony. Yu Qingcheng and the other two weren't strangers to this balcony. Big brother. After several hours, the space fluctuated. A voice arose from the balcony. Yi Qinghan was standing on the balcony with the women, looking at the wandering sea in the distance. He turned around and didn't know if he should cry or laugh. Lord Devourer and Yao Ji appeared on the balcony, with a young man standing next to them. He wasn't tall, even shorter than Yi Qinghan. He wore a green robe, and his body looked thin and weak. His face was delicate, but his appearance wasn't much different from Yi Qinghan's, except that he was a little more handsome. He had a pair of shiny black eyes, which were strange and full of spiritual energy. Needless to say, he was Xiaohei's human form. However, this Xiaohei's human form was similar to Yi Qinghan's. However, his eyes were full of spiritual energy, and his aura was different. Xiaohei flew toward Yi Qinghan like a lightning strike. As he was about to land on Yi Qinghan's shoulder, he halted in the air. He was a little surprised, looking at Yi Qinghan's shoulder, then at himself. He scratched his head and laughed awkwardly. Yi Qinghan laughed, walking over and giving Xiaohei a bear hug. He teased, Xiaohei, You've turned into a human. Do you still want to stand on Big Brother's shoulder? Chapter 983. Xiaohei pouted, feeling even more embarrassed. He was used to standing on Yi Qinghan's shoulder. Now that he had turned into a human, he couldn't get used to it. Everybody found it funny. Xiaohei had imitated Yi Qinghan's appearance. With his thin body, green robe, and delicate face, if he stood next to Yi Qinghan, people would say that they were blood brothers. However, Xiaohei's spirited eyes were constantly moving around. This caused his temperament to be completely different from Yi Qinghan's. He looked like a mischievous youngster. After so many years, especially after he had become the Fire Dragon City Master, Yi Qinghan's body naturally revealed a special aura. He had become more steady and domineering. Now, after he had turned into the Cold Night Sovereign, his body seemed to be covered by an invisible halo, which gave people an inexplicable feeling of a noble, domineering, and imposing aura. The so-called changing body, changing aura. When a person reached a certain realm and a certain status, they would naturally have the same aura. Big brother, I can't stand on your shoulder anymore. Can I? Blackie rubbed his nose. Instinctively, he did what he used to do, using his fingernails to scratch his nose. He had almost scratched his nose. Everybody burst out laughing. Even Lord Devour cracked his mouth, laughing without any manners. After laughing for a while, Yi Qinghan patted Xiaohei's shoulder with a serious face, saying, Xiaohei, you're a person now, a real person. Big brother will always be your big brother, but you have to work hard to change. Become a person. You have your own life. Don't let Shui or look down on you. Yes, I, Lord Xiaohei, am so smart. I'm sure he will change soon. Xiaohei patted his chest, not minding at all. Ha, Xiaohei, you should change your name. Your family name is Devour. From now on, you will be called Devour. Lord Devour's face was full of love, as if he was treating his own child who had grown up. Sure, hey, Annie, my surname is Sure. The cheeky smile on Xiaohei's face disappeared. Lord Devour had promised him that after he transformed, he would tell him his real identity. Now that he had told him his surname, was he going to tell him about his past? Lord Devour's face became stern as he said to the others, Come here and sit. We're on the same side, so there's no need to be so polite. Yi Qinghan arched his brows as he knew that Lord Devour wanted to talk about the Soul Emperor. He nodded and followed Lord Devour. Everybody sat down under the grape trellis, gazing at Lord Devour. However, she became silent and closed her eyes. After a long time, she opened them and looked at Xiaohei. Your father's original name was Soul Eater. This was the name he gave himself. He and I grew up in the Dark Forest. We were both divine beasts. In the beginning, we were always bullied by the holy beasts in the Dark Forest. Your father always protected me, and we almost died several times. Your father's innate talent was really abnormal. In just 10 years, your father had reached the God realm, killed the ultimate holy beasts, unified the Dark Forest, and secretly unified the Fire Dragon continent. After that, your father and I came to the God world, starting his legendary life. We started to travel in the Misty continent. He was the fastest genius to reach the peak of 7th grade war god in the history of the God world. He was the undisputed #1 under the Sovereign Realm. He was the second blacksmith in the God world. He was the Soul Emperor, the master of the Soul Emperor Pavilion, the first palace master of the Soul Devouring Manor. Lord Devour slowly told him the story of the Soul Emperor. His legendary life was filled with pride and nostalgia. The enchantress also looked like she was recalling the past, as if she was thinking about all the earth-shattering things that extraordinary man had done. Soul Emperor, father. Tears trickled down Xiaohei's cheeks. He stooped his head, his bright eyes gloomy. Actually, he had guessed something. However, he had tried his best to avoid the fact that the Soul Emperor was his father. Because the Soul Emperor was dead, everybody kept silent. Yi Qinghan didn't comfort Xiaohei. Some emotions needed to be vented. Otherwise, suppressing them in his heart wasn't a good thing for Xiaohei. After a while, Xiaohei lifted his head, looking at Lord Devour. Annie, how did my father die? And My mother? Lord Devour's eyes were gloomy. Even the enchantress turned her face away, as she couldn't bear it. After a while, Lord Devour said coldly, "Your mother was a wandering warrior in the Star Sea. Her name was Hua Feiyue. She was beautiful and lovely. She was also an extraordinary woman, the flower of the Star Sea. Unfortunately, someone killed her." Who? Xiaohei jolted up. A murderous aura shot up into the sky, just like the time when he released the Soul Devourer, the brutal aura of a savage beast. Lord Devour heaved a deep sigh. The first venerable of the Star Sea, Li Kong. Swoosh! Xiaohei turned into a shadow, dashing down the platform. However, a figure was faster than Xiaohei, hugging him. "Xiaohei, calm down. Didn't your auntie take revenge? Do you know why? Li Kong must die. No doubt about it. Big Brother will hand him over to you. You can tear him apart. Trust me. Trust Big Brother." Xiaohei looked at Yi Qinghan's resolute eyes. Tears gushed out one more time. He hugged Yi Qinghan and cried like a helpless child. Yi Qinghan gently patted Xiaohei's back, looking up at the sky. He didn't say anything, but 2 streams of tears rolled down his cheeks. Ever since Xiaohei could remember, he had never seen his parents. After so many years, he finally got the news of his parents, but they had passed away. In Yi Qinghan's heart, Xiaohei was always a child, even now. This news was cruel to him, but he had to face it. If he couldn't get through this, he would never grow up. After a long time, Xiaohei's emotions calmed down. Lord Devour said faintly, "Xiaohei, you and Little Han will take revenge for your mother. As for the one who killed your father, you don't need to know. Even if we gather all of us, we can't take revenge." What? Not only Xiaohei, but everybody else was shocked. Even the enchantress didn't know the whole story. She was astounded. Yi Qinghan had killed dozens of venerables with one palm strike. His competence had reached the peak of the divine world. Not to mention Lord Devour. Even the Misty Monarch had to give him face, which meant that he was much stronger. Unexpectedly, even the 2 monarchs couldn't take revenge. How strong was the enemy? Was there someone stronger than level 9? Annie, you're lying. You and Big Brother are so strong. You can kill any monarch, right? Impossible, impossible. Xiaohei shook his head as he couldn't believe it. Harumph! Lord Devour snorted coldly, his face getting darker. He clasped his hands behind his back, walking to the edge of the rooftop. Looking at the vast sky, he sighed weakly. "You know too little? The water in this world is too deep. Warriors like the Misty Monarch, I can slap them to death with just one hand. But your father's enemy can slap me to death with just one hand." This, Lord Devour's gloomy words had frightened everybody one more time. Everybody's face changed. Xiaohei's face turned pale. Lord Devour could slap the Misty Monarch to death with just one hand, but the enemy could slap her to death with just one hand? It was really King Hell. Yi Qinghan's brows arched again. He recalled something. When the fiery dragon city was built, he didn't understand why the Misty Monarch treated him so well. Not only did he come here personally, but he also told the experts of the divine world that the fiery dragon city would be under his protection. Then he sent people, deliver materials, and help the fiery dragon city build. At that time, he was suspicious. Even if Lord Devour was a level 9 expert, the Misty Monarch, as the overlord of the continent, didn't need to be so attentive. At that time, he even suspected that the Misty Monarch and Lord Devour had something going on. But now, it was clear, because Lord Devour was stronger than the Misty Monarch, and much stronger. The Misty Monarch was flattering Lord Devour. Combined with what the Battle Emperor had said, Yi Qinghan was absolutely sure that a level 9 expert wasn't invincible. There were realms above level 9. Could it be the legendary Divine Emperor? The Divine World wasn't the only plane. Perhaps there were many other planes like the Divine World, like the 9 Nether Demon World? The 9 Nether Demon World? Perhaps there was an even higher and more powerful plane? Looking at Lord Devour's curvaceous back, the vast wandering sea, and the boundless sky, Shi Yan's heart sank. Yi Qinghan sighed deeply. Lord Devour was right. The water in this world was really deep. Chapter 984. Xiaohei. Now you know why I didn't tell you about your identity, right? I just want you to grow up happily. You don't need to care about these things. I've been doing this for years. Of course, if you try your best to cultivate, I'll be happy. Lord Devour turned around, looking at Xiaohei. Then, he turned to Yi Qinghan and continued, but I want to tell you that you have to learn from your old master. Attitude. Xiaohan has a good attitude. No matter what kind of pressure he's facing, he'll always have a positive attitude. Only with a good attitude can he face everything calmly and continuously improve. Do you understand? Yi Qinghan wasn't modest. He nodded. His character was always like this. He was optimistic and full of hope for life. If a man didn't have hope for life, he wouldn't achieve anything. Especially in times of adversity, if he didn't have a positive attitude, things would get worse. Then, things would only get worse and worse. And in the end, there would only be complete defeat. Let me ask, if even you have given up, who else can save you? Yi Qinghan would never give up until the last moment. Even if he couldn't avoid it, he wouldn't be afraid of death. Yi Qinghan hoped that Xiaohei could learn from this attitude. It was important to him because it could help him walk out of the shadow of his parents' death and find the weird Xiaohei who was full of fighting spirit. Xiaohei didn't say anything. He just quietly walked to the door of the rooftop. His back looked bleak and gloomy. Yao Ji had a gleam of worry in her eyes, and so did the other women. Lord Jiu was more direct. She stood up hurriedly, wanting to chase after Xiaohei to comfort him. Don't go! Lord Devour and Yi Qinghan shouted almost at the same time. Lord Jiu's feet shivered, retreating, looking at Lord Devour in confusion. Lord Devour didn't say anything. Yi Qinghan had to force a smile, explaining, he needs to calm down. He has to think it through himself. No one can help him. Lord Devour nodded, then turned to Yu Qingsheng and the others. You guys leave first. I have something to discuss with Little Han. Yu Qingsheng and the others hurried to excuse themselves. They didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Madame Jiu knew that they were going to discuss something important, so she also wanted to leave. However, Lord Devour waved his hand, asking her to stand aside. Apparently, he didn't mind her at all. Yao Ji sat there quietly. With her relationship with Lord Devour, she didn't need to leave. Yi Qinghan sat up straight. He knew that Lord Devour wanted to talk business with him. He guessed that he would know many secrets that the divine world didn't know. He just didn't know how much Lord Devour would tell him. Little Han. Lord Devour's face was calm again, without any fluctuation of emotion. She picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Then, she said faintly, I used to tell Agio that if you could get out of the Investiture Valley, I would give you a big chance. In fact, I was going to give this opportunity to Mo Xiao, but after you came out, I didn't think about it. I'm going to give it to you. Big chance? Yi Qinghan was surprised. Madame Jiu nodded. That year, Lord Devour did say that. And Yao Ji looked pensive, blinking her eyes. This big chance is a treasure that goes against the natural order. The supreme treasure of the 9th layer of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Light radiated from Lord Shi's face. Light shot out from her eyes, and her voice was excited. Apparently, she couldn't control herself because of this treasure. She didn't wait for Yi Qinghan to talk, continuing. Actually, I don't care if you can enter the 8th layer of the Soul Emperor Pavilion or not. I'm going to give you the supreme treasure of the 9th layer of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. However, your speed of growth has surprised me. So, I don't want to give it to you anymore. This, Yi Qinghan was bewildered. Lord Devour made him dizzy. Why didn't she give it to him after giving it to him? Lord Devour paused for a while, then explained, Our enemy is really strong. I've been looking for someone with excellent innate talents who could help me take revenge. I'm going to ask him to get that treasure, and then we'll kill that enemy together. You're one of the candidates I've prepared. Yu Qingsheng, Mo Xiao, Xiaoyu, and Xiaohei are also my candidates. Among them, you and Mo Xiao are the ones I value the most. That's why I've arranged for you to train and endure hardships. I hope you won't blame me for this. I've been waiting for you to reach a certain realm to refine that treasure. Then, you'll help me deal with that enemy. Although we can't win, we can at least have a chance to fight. Your growth speed has surprised me. Now, I need you. You have to grow stronger. After you've refined that treasure, you'll be stronger. Then, we'll be more confident to kill that enemy. Do you understand what I mean, little Han? After listening to her, Yi Ching Han quieted down, pondering. The enchantress's eyes brightened. She exchanged looks with Lord Devour. Apparently, they agreed with her. Pondering for a while, Yi Ching Han opened his mouth. You mean the stronger I am, the stronger I will be after refining that treasure? So, which aspect of my power do I need to improve? What level do I need to reach? And, with my current competence, can a treasure increase my power by a lot? Who's the enemy you've mentioned? Why don't you attack him now? Lord Devour and the enchantress exchanged looks. They both looked pleased. Smart people could understand easily, and they got the point immediately. Lord Devour contemplated for a while, but he didn't answer Yi Ching Han's question. Instead, he talked to him faintly. You should release your eternal space. Don't attack. Just sense how much space power you can control, and how far you can control it. Yi Ching Han was shaken. Lord Devour said that it was his will, which made Yi Ching Han suspicious. He stood up, his face dark. Slowly, he opened his arms. The space around him twisted, and the space rippled. Of course, with Lord Devour's eyesight, he could easily see the 4 basic space power Upanishads moving in a certain trajectory around Yi Ching Han, releasing them at the same time. Then, they resonated with the surrounding space power. Yi Ching Han closed his eyes, his soul sensing the space power around him, trying to find the furthest distance he could control. After a while, he released the eternal space. After resting for a while, he opened his eyes and said, the space power I can control is around 10 million miles. It's around 10 times bigger than the soul-devouring mansion. Yeah, Lord Devour nodded. Apparently, it was the same as what she had guessed. She stood up, pointing at the wandering sea in the distance. I can tell you that my competence is like the space power I control. It's as big as this wandering sea. Tell me, if you fight me, what will happen? Wandering sea? Yi Ching Han was shocked. The wandering sea was bigger than the entire Misty continent, and their competence was more than 10 times different. If he fought with Lord Devour, wouldn't he be smashed to death easily? Lord Devour said with a stern face, and our enemy's competence is like the space power of the entire star sea. Do you understand it now? Yi Ching Han gulped. Of course, he understood it. It was because the star sea was as big as 3 misty continents. Chapter 985. For times the size of the misty continent, which meant that his strength was 3 times that of Lord Devour and dozens of times stronger than him. No wonder Lord Devour said that all of them together couldn't defeat him. This enemy was so strong. Of course, we can't calculate his real strength like this. It's just a metaphor to let you know how big the gap is. Lord Devour saw that Yi Ching Han's face was getting more and more serious, so he smiled to ease the atmosphere. Then he continued, actually, we divide the strength of the level 9 experts into 3 realms. Lower level 9, upper level 9, and peak level 9. My strength is upper level 9, Jita, and the others are lower level 9. And you can barely be called lower level 9. But our enemy is a level 9 supreme. Level 9 supreme? Yi Ching Han furrowed his brows. Anything that was related to the word supreme was extremely powerful. He didn't know why the Soul Emperor and Lord Devour would provoke a level 9 supreme. However, since it had already happened, he didn't want to look into it or regret it. He and his family, and all the people of the Fire Dragon continent were tied together with Lord Devour. They were bound together, and they were bound together. Lower level 9 and upper level 9, as well as level 9 supreme, are all level 9, but their strengths are worlds apart. Just like Jita and the others, they can't defeat me alone. Similarly, Jita and the others, we can't defeat a level 9 supreme. Lord Devour continued to explain to Yi Ching Han. Yi Ching Han had entered level 9, so he had to explain these things to him, so that he wouldn't have to take a detour. Then, why isn't this enemy attacking us now? Yi Ching Han asked again. This man is seriously injured, and his soul and divine crystal are in big trouble. Moreover, He seems to be trapped in a palace, and the Soul Emperor said that there is a powerful restriction that is constantly attacking him. In short, he can't come out yet, but once he does, we'll all be in trouble. Light shot out from Lord Devour's eyes. He seemed to recall the past. His face became murderous, and his voice became cold. That year, Li Kong killed the Soul Emperor's wife. The Soul Emperor swore to take revenge. However, at that time, his competence and the treasures he had were only at the Venerable Realm. And I was even worse. I was just at level 7. The two of us wandered around the God world, entering various arcane realms and exploring the chaotic streams of space. In the end, he accidentally stumbled into a strange and wonderful place. There, we discovered 2 treasures of heaven and earth, 2 treasures that can raise our strength to an extremely powerful level. Speaking up to here, the murderous aura on Lord Devour's face slowly disappeared. What replaced it was guilt and sadness, and there were sparkling tears in his eyes. He paused for a moment before continuing. At that time, the Soul Emperor refused to take it because we all felt a fatal danger. But I didn't believe in fate. I sent the Soul Emperor flying away and went alone. I didn't expect that after I got it, the Soul Emperor had no choice but to release the soul-devouring transformation to save me. Moreover, he was attacked by that enemy. Not long after he escaped, he died. I refined one of the treasures, and my strength soared from level 7 to the upper level 9. Yi Ching Han was enlightened. No wonder so many experts in the God world were puzzled. How could Lord Devour's strength soar so fast? More than 100 years ago, he was just a war god, and now he had become a level 9 expert. It turned out he had refined the same treasure as the one in the 9th floor of the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Yi Ching Han's desire for that heaven-defying treasure increased. If Lord Devour refined it with his level 7 power, he could reach the upper level 9. Now that his overall strength had reached level 9, what realm could he reach after refining it? Don't dream so beautifully. Lord Devour could see through Yi Ching Han's thoughts at first glance. He said leisurely, "Even if you refine that treasure now, you're just a little bit stronger than me. Even if we join hands, we can barely resist a grade 9 supreme being. It's possible that all of us will die. So, you have to become stronger. When you fuse with that treasure, you will have a better chance. Do you understand now?" Yi Ching Han nodded. Only now did he completely understand that the higher his strength was, the greater his strength would be when he refined this precious treasure. He looked at Lord Devour seriously. "What realm do I need to reach?" "You have to comprehend more high-level mysteries to reach the Venerable Realm. Of course, if you can comprehend an ultimate mystery and reach level 9, you will have absolute confidence," Lord Devour said seriously. Then he smiled and said, "Little Han, don't be too hasty. To comprehend the principle, you need a moment of inspiration, a flash of insight. That enemy of ours won't be able to get out within 1,000,000 years. So, don't give yourself too much pressure. You just need to work hard on your cultivation. Leave the rest to me." Yi Ching Han stood up, bowing to Lord Devour with a respectful face. He knew that this woman was actually very pitiful. She carried everything on her own, silently withstood countless pressures, and secretly arranged countless things. She was like a towering mountain behind them, shielding them from the wind and the rain. However, many people didn't understand her, including Shi Yin, who had a grudge against her that year. The enchantress spoke for the first time. She looked at Lord Devour and said faintly, "Diawu, you've worked hard these years. Now, I think that compared to you, although you've been bored for so many years in the illusory palace, you've worked harder." Lord Devour didn't say anything, but he looked relaxed. Because of Yi Ching Han's growth and the enchantress's old friend, the enchantress, she felt that the burden on her shoulders was lighter. "Sir, I have something to ask you." Yi Ching Han kept silent for a while before asking. Seeing Lord Devour nod, he continued, "Is the divine world a plane? Are there other planes in this world? Or is there a higher plane?" Lord Devour looked at Yi Ching Han, feeling funny and angry at the same time. The enchantress rolled her eyes at him. Lord Devour didn't say anything, but the enchantress said, Of course, the divine world is a plane. As for the other planes, you should know them when you come to the divine world. Yi Qinghan arched his brows as he got it now. 9 nether demon world, 9 nether underworld. Lord Devour nodded this time. This world has so many parallel spaces, and each of them is a plane. The material plane was a miniature parallel space, and the spatial god equipment was a miniature space. The divine world is a big parallel space, and the demon world and the underworld are the 2 big planes closest to the divine world. About the higher level planes, you don't need to know. Lord Devour quieted down. Apparently, this conversation was over. Yi Qinghan stood up, his mind clear. Looking at the sky, he felt his heroic spirit rising. It was the first time he found out how vast this world was. For some inexplicable reason, he suddenly recalled a phrase from before. My journey is this sea of stars. Chapter 986. There was a small island in the north of the soul-devouring city. This island was called Drifting Island. Lord Devour had told Yi Qinghan this name. It was said that the Soul Emperor had named it that year. This island was beautiful, but it wasn't because of the beautiful scenery. Rather, it had a kind of bleak beauty. Yi Qinghan came to this island alone. There were no flowers or grasses on this island, only maple trees. When the wind blew, the entire island was covered with yellow maple leaves. It was full of loneliness and bleakness. Wandering footsteps everywhere in the world, but I don't have a home. The winter wind with snowflakes blows my tears. Stepping on the thick maple leaves, they rustled. Listening to the rustling of the leaves in the wind, Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with yellow. A wanderer's song from his previous life echoed in his ears. All of a sudden, a feeling of loneliness arose in his heart. At this moment, he understood why the Soul Emperor had named this island Drifting Island. A soul from Earth had suddenly come to this world. In this strange world, facing countless strangers, he was out of tune with this world, unable to integrate into it. The Soul Emperor felt that he was the loneliest person in this world. He was far away from his home, his family, and everything he was familiar with, wandering in this strange world. Although Yi Qinghan had a feeling of loneliness in his heart, it wasn't as deep as the Soul Emperor's. In his previous life, he was an orphan with no one to rely on. He had felt the warmth and coldness of people in that world, but wasn't he also a wanderer in that world? In this world, he had his own home, family, wife, and son. Most importantly, he felt that he had become a part of this world. Walking slowly, Yi Qinghan enjoyed this feeling of loneliness, a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. Half an hour later, he saw a small hill and an even lonelier figure on top of it. After Xiao He had left the sky platform, Lord Devour had sent him a message, asking him to come here and calm down. He had stayed here for 3 days. When Yi Qinghan felt that it was about time, he hurried over. He lifted his feet lightly and walked to the top of the hill. Then, he sat down beside Xiao He. Yi Qinghan did not speak. Xiao He only turned his head to look at Yi Qinghan for a moment before continuing to look forward. In front of them was the boundless wandering sea. At this moment, the demonic sun had set, and the demonic moon had risen. The night had just begun, and it was as desolate as water. The wandering sea was silent, like a gentle woman smiling at the moonlight. Yi Qinghan still did not speak. Xiao He also remained silent. The 2 of them sat quietly and looked at the wandering ocean in the distance. They looked at the stars in the sky and looked at the watery moonlight. It was quiet all around, but both parties felt that silence spoke louder than words. Yi Qinghan knew that Xiao He was upset, and Xiao He knew that Yi Qinghan was there to comfort him. Their souls were connected. Actually, there were some things that didn't need to be said. Both of them understood. Yi Qinghan was here. That was enough. The sky brightened, and with the gentle light of dawn, a dragon boat floated over from the distant wandering sea. There was a woman on the dragon boat. She was dressed in white, and her eyes were filled with warmth as she looked at Little Black with a smile. Yi Qinghan stood up and gently patted Xiao He's shoulder. Then he left quietly. Another light breeze blew. The maple leaves on the entire wandering island started to fall again. The sky was filled with yellow leaves. How could it be described as desolate? Yi Qinghan returned to soul-devouring city alone. He walked into the city lord manor. However, he did not go to the rooftop. Instead, he went to the third floor. There was a large hall on the third floor of every city lord manor. There was a stone door that led to a place, Battle God Pavilion. When Yi Qinghan appeared in soul-devouring city's Battle God Pavilion, countless battle gods in the plaza were stunned. Then, they all knelt down. Swish! Countless figures quickly flew over and knelt down at the same time. They shouted, "Greetings, frigid knight's sovereign. Rise!" Yi Qinghan waved his hand and said with a smile, "I am here today to advance to the battle god grade. I am still a quasi-battle god. What procedures do I need? Do I need any challenges?" "Sovereign, you are joking too much. The entire divine realm knows your identity. You need to be certified. I will immediately go to the general pavilion to apply for a 9th grade honor." The person kneeling at the front was the Battle God Pavilion branch master of Soul, Devouring City. He was at the peak of the 7th grade. When he heard Yi Qinghan's words, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. The people behind him were also sweating profusely. Was this frigid knight sovereign here to play with them? His 9th grade strength was publicly acknowledged in the divine realm. Killing more than 30 supremacies with a single palm strike was the best proof. Moreover, the Misty Sovereign had given him the title of Frigid Knight Sovereign. Would such a person care about the vanity of the Battle God Pavilion? He even asked if there was a need for procedures. Challenge? Could it be that the Battle God Pavilion needed to find a few supremacies to beat him up? There is no need to go through so much trouble. I just want to apply for a 7th grade honor. I don't need to go to the general pavilion to apply for it, right? Of course, Yi Qinghan was not here to play with them. He was not so bored that his balls hurt. He was here to clarify one thing: the origin of the Slaughter God Saber. The Slaughter God Saber was an awesome weapon. If not for the Slaughter God Saber, he would have died in the stream of evil spirits. It would also have been difficult for him to survive the battle in the Sealed God Valley. Countless people in the divine realm knew about the origin of this saber, but they could not tell him. This made him feel as if a bone was stuck in his throat. It was very uncomfortable. All the 5th grade war gods in the Battle God Pavilion knew about this saber, but they were not allowed to spread it. Those who were not from the Battle God Pavilion did not know about it. Even the Soul Emperor who obtained this saber did not know. Thus, he wanted to apply for a 7th grade war god to clarify. 7th grade? The pavilion master's forehead was filled with more black lines. It seemed like this frigid knight sovereign was really here to play with him. You're already in 9th grade. Do you still need a 7th grade honor and medal? Why? Is there a problem? Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows. He seemed to be slightly angry. No problem. Of course there's no problem. There's no problem at all. The pavilion branch has the right to directly bestow the honor below the venerable realm. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows. This scared the pavilion master and the countless war gods behind him. The pavilion master hurriedly bowed and said, "I can handle it for you immediately. Sovereign, this way please." Under the personal guidance of the pavilion master, Yi Qinghan arrived at a large hall. The pavilion master let Yi Qinghan sit at the head of the table. Then, 2 maids immediately served fragrant tea. Yi Qinghan had just taken a sip when a 7th grade war god walked in. After saluting Yi Qinghan, he handed a spatial ring to the pavilion master and left respectfully. "Sovereign, the procedures and some small items that a 7th grade war god can obtain are all in this spatial ring. Please keep it well." The pavilion master handed the spatial ring to Yi Qinghan with both hands. In an instant, all the procedures and the items that a 7th grade war god should be bestowed were completed. Although he knew that Yi Qinghan did not care for it, since Yi Qinghan had requested it, it was naturally done immediately. Yi Qinghan put it away and asked, "Didn't they say that after advancing to the 5th and 7th grade, they would have a chance to watch the simulation of the chief pavilion master's battle against the demons?" "Oh, yes. I will activate it immediately. The pavilion master suddenly understood. So Yi Qinghan came to watch this. However, he was already a ninth-grade war god. Watching this would not be of much use to him, right? Since Yi Qinghan had requested it, the pavilion master did not dare to say anything. He immediately activated the simulation. The surrounding walls suddenly lit up. Yi Qinghan once again arrived at the world of lava. He once again saw the 3 devil sovereigns and the 3 pavilion masters of the war god pavilion. The battle between the 6 of them was very intense. After watching for a while, Yi Qinghan finally understood the origin of the slaughter god blade. It was the weapon of the most powerful devil sovereign among the 3 devil sovereigns. However, what made Yi Qinghan extremely depressed was that the battle had not started for a long time, but there was not a single casualty. Furthermore, the high-level techniques had not been used yet. Just as he was watching the battle with great interest, the scene suddenly changed and the scenery in front of him suddenly disappeared. That's it? Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows again and turned to ask the pavilion master. There was a hint of displeasure in his tone. The pavilion master hurriedly replied. In reply to Sovereign, "It is only this long. I think the chief pavilion has preserved the later scenes. Every pavilion branch only has such a short video." Who is the one holding the slaughter god blade? Yi Qinghan pondered for a moment and asked again. That is the supreme devil sovereign of the 9-nethered devil realm, the supreme devil. He was suppressed under the lava by the chief pavilion master. The pavilion master answered without hesitation. Clearly, this information was given by the chief pavilion. It was very clear. Supreme devil. No wonder it is called the supreme slaughter god blade. No wonder the demons are so afraid of this blade. No wonder this blade can absorb the aura of the demons. It seems that this blade is not simple. Yi Qinghan nodded. He understood some things in his heart. However, he also had more doubts. Chapter 987. After exiting the War God Pavilion, Yi Qinghan went to the rooftop to bid farewell to Lord Devour. There were still some things to take care of in Flame Dragon City, and he had to find time to thank the ethereal sovereign. There was also the matter of Forefather Night Emperor. He had a lot of things to take care of. He didn't have time to stay in Soul-Devouring City. Unexpectedly, when he brought up this matter, Lord Devour waved his hand and said, "Take care of other things first. You should go to Ethereal City first. Jida and the other sovereigns have been waiting for you for several days. You should go and visit them." And okay. Yi Qinghan nodded and then nodded at Yao Ji. He sent a voice transmission to Yu Qingqing and the others, and then went to the teleportation formation. Countless guards and citizens of Soul-Devouring City were very respectful when they saw Yi Qinghan. However, they found it strange. Why did this sovereign always fly instead of using instant teleportation? What they didn't know was that this frigid night sovereign actually didn't know instant teleportation. When Yi Qinghan arrived at Misty City once again, the moment he appeared, he alarmed the guards. Yi Qinghan looked at the cultivators kneeling on the ground and saw the respectful and worshipful expressions on their faces. He smiled with some distress. It seemed like it wasn't easy to be a star in his previous life. It was a sense of accomplishment to show off once in a while, but it wasn't fun to do it every time. No wonder the ethereal sovereign often went into seclusion. He probably concealed his identity even when he went out. It was really uncomfortable to be looked at like a monkey swish. Not long after, Venerable Fragrance appeared with instant teleportation. The rest of the Venerables had probably gone to the Baleful Een stream. Recently, it was said that the Baleful Een stream was stirring again. Venerable Fragrance respectfully invited Yi Qinghan into the palace of the city lord, but she was very nervous. That year in Dripping Spring City, because of Tu Xie, she had offended Yi Qinghan. Later, when Flame Dragon City was built, he had also appeared. If Yi Qinghan said anything in front of the ethereal sovereign, he could even slap him to death right now, and he wouldn't be able to resist. Yi Qinghan seemed to have forgotten the unhappiness in the past. With a smile on his face, he chatted with Venerable Fragrance as they walked in. Of course, it wasn't that Yi Qinghan had forgotten what had happened in the past. Now that he was in a different realm, he saw things differently. he had to give face to the misty mountain lord. After chatting for a while in the city lord's mansion, Venerable Fragrance heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Yi Ching Han did not care about the past at all. Venerable Fragrance was secretly grateful and became more respectful to Yi Ching Han. The two of them left the city lord residence and flew towards Ethereal Peak. Although Venerable Fragrance was curious as to why Yi Ching Han didn't teleport, he didn't dare to ask. Since Yi Ching Han wanted to fly, he could only follow obediently. Their speed was very fast, and it didn't take long for them to reach Ethereal Peak. Perhaps the Misty Mountain Lord had already given instructions. Venerable Fragrance brought Yi Ching Han and flew directly to Ethereal Peak. There was an incomparably gorgeous palace on Ethereal Peak. Venerable Fragrance had never entered it before, and this time was no exception. She respectfully knelt on one knee outside and shouted in a deep voice, "Fragrance requests an audience with the monarch. The frigid night monarch has arrived." Yi Ching Han didn't kneel or even bow. Before Venerable Fragrance could finish speaking, an imposing figure suddenly appeared in front of Yi Ching Han. He wore a blue robe, had a medium height, but was rather sturdy. He looked like a middle-aged man with long hair casually draped behind his head. His face was handsome and amiable, and he gave Yi Ching Han the feeling that he was refined. "Greetings, Lord." Yi Ching Han hurriedly bowed and saluted. Disregarding the Misty Mountain Lord's strength, qualifications, and age, he only talked about what happened outside Fiery Dragon City. He was worthy of this salute from Yi Ching Han. "Ching Han, don't be so polite. Just call me Jida. Let's talk inside. I will introduce you to a few big brothers and big sisters." The Misty Mountain Lord was very polite. In fact, he was overly polite. If Yi Ching Han hadn't interacted with Lord Devour before, he would definitely be overwhelmed by the favor. Jida was giving Lord Devour face. Even so, Yi Ching Han had a good impression of this Misty Mountain Lord. However, his refined temperament made Yi Ching Han a little suspicious. Wasn't Jida the leader of the largest god bandit group in the divine world? How was he the leader of a god bandit group? He was simply a teacher. The two of them walked into the gorgeous palace. Venerable Fragrance looked at Yi Ching Han's back with envy and flew down the mountain with a little sadness. With his strength, he didn't have the chance to enter this palace. This world was very realistic. Strength was the symbol of status, and the strong were respected. The palace was very gorgeous, so gorgeous that it was a little extravagant. However, Yi Ching Han could understand. After all, he was one of the few peak experts in the divine world. This kind of face-saving work was always necessary. He wasn't like Lord Devour, who liked to keep a low profile. If it weren't for Yi Ching Han, probably not many people would know that his strength had reached level 9. There were people in the hall of the palace. There were 2 people sitting on both sides. There were also some maids standing at the side to serve them. When the 4 of them saw Yi Ching Han walk in, one of them stood up first, followed by 2 others. The last one stood up lazily. The first one to stand up was a muscular man. His muscles were as strong as a gorilla's, and he was more than a head taller than Yi Ching Han. He laughed and said, "Let us welcome the #1 genius of the divine world, the youngest lord, Hanya Sovereign." Yi Ching Han faintly glanced around and smiled. He bowed politely and said, "Yi Ching Han greets all the lords." The muscular man's loud voice sounded again. "Little brother Yi, don't be so polite. I am Mo Shanghuang, the Lord of Tianqi. You can just call me Big Brother Mo. In the divine world, seniority doesn't matter, only strength matters. You are now at level 9, so we are the same generation. We are brothers. Greetings, Big Brother Mo." Yi Ching Han nodded and said, he was a straightforward person. If others gave him face, he would give them face. Both Jida and Mo Shanghuang revealed looks of admiration. No matter what, Yi Ching Han's demeanor was neither servile nor overbearing. Ordinary people did not have it. Who could be so calm when meeting the hegemons of the god realm for the first time? As the host, Jida naturally had to introduce everyone. He said to a warrior with blood-red hair and armor beside Mo Shanghuang, "Come, Ching Han, let me introduce you. This is the Blood Knight Sovereign, Shui Qianqiu." "Greetings, Lord Shui." Yi Qinghan nodded slightly. This person stood up later than Mo Shanghuang, but he was still polite. Therefore, Yi Qinghan changed the way he addressed him. The Blood Knight's sovereign said politely, "The Cold Knight's sovereign is a young hero. Qianzhou admires you." This is the Grace Mainland's sovereign Yanran. However, she likes someone else, Miss Yanran. Miss Yanran is the only sovereign in the divine world who is a soul cultivator. She is still single. Jita then introduced the only woman present. Yi Qinghan had been paying attention to this woman the moment he entered. However, it would be rude to look at her in detail. Now that he looked at her, he was stunned. There was no doubt that Sovereign Yanran was a beauty, a great beauty. She had an enchanting figure, an oval face, and exquisite facial features. She wore a tight white dress that outlined her slender waist and long legs. The most important thing was her temperament. Perhaps it was because she was a soul cultivator. This monarch Yanran was full of spiritual qi. Her eyes were the most charming, and she had an indescribable temperament that was very attractive. "Greetings, Miss Yanran," Yi Qinghan said politely. Sovereign Yanran seemed to be a person who did not like to talk. She was a little cold. She smiled slightly and nodded slightly. The last person had a cold expression. Jita introduced him as the South Mountain Sovereign, Inke. Yi Qinghan bowed politely, but Inke only nodded slightly and continued to raise his head high. Yi Qinghan was too lazy to care about him. What made Yi Qinghan feel strange was that these sovereigns had gathered here today. It was obvious that they were here for him. However, there were still two sovereigns who were not here. It was normal for the hidden sovereigns to not be here, but there was also the Wind Moon sovereign of the Wind Moon continent. This was very suspicious. Everyone started to chat. Under the enthusiasm of Jida and Mo Shanghuang, the atmosphere was quite pleasant. However, the South Mountain Sovereign's cold and arrogant face made Yi Qinghan slightly uncomfortable. Yi Qinghan's guess was right. Indeed, it was something that everyone was concerned about. It was about the eternal space. All the sovereigns were afraid that if every space master realized this profound mystery, the divine world would be in chaos when there were a lot of sovereigns. Yi Qinghan confidently told everyone that besides him, no one in this world could realize the eternal space. However, he did not say the specific reason. However, everyone believed him because Yi Qinghan was not an idiot. If others could realize it, they would definitely not say it. After getting the answer, everyone said a few polite words and left. The South Mountain Sovereign was the first to leave, followed by the Blood Knight Sovereign and God Grace Yanran. In the end, only Jida and Mo Shanghuang were left. The two of them were clearly prepared to continue chatting with Yi Qinghan to build up their relationship. At that moment, the messaging talisman at Yi Qinghan's waist vibrated. Yi Qinghan scanned it with his divine sense in confusion. No one should be sending him a message at this time, right? However, after scanning it, Yi Qinghan was slightly startled. This messaging talisman had been given to him by Her Highness Cherry Blossom. Yi Qinghan had many things to do and had forgotten something. Cherry Blossom wanted him to immediately send her a message once he was out of danger. There was only a short message on the messaging talisman, asking Yi Qinghan to reply to her if it was convenient. Of course, it was not convenient right now, so Yi Qinghan did not care. He continued chatting with Jida and Mo Shanghuang for a few hours. Finally, Mo Shanghuang bade farewell and instructed Yi Qinghan to visit the Heaven Awakened continent when he had the time before teleporting away. Yi Qinghan also took his leave, and the Misty Monarch didn't try to keep him. He only said that after the matter at Baleful Stream was settled, he would visit Yi Qinghan and discuss some things. After flying down Ethereal Peak, Yi Qinghan immediately took out the messaging talisman to send a message. Why did he ask Her Highness Cherry Blossom? He also told her that he had returned to the Ethereal continent. Cherry Blossom's message came very quickly, but it made Yi Qinghan's expression change instantly. Cherry Blossom's message was very simple. There was only one sentence. "Brother-in-law, if you don't come, my cousin will be someone else's. By the way, my cousin is called Blue Rain." Chapter 988. Brother-in-law? Blue Rain. In Yi Qinghan's mind, those bewitching blue nails after the rain, as well as those tender and alluring plump lips appeared. Blue Rain had been in the South Ridge continent for so many years, but they had never sent him a message, nor had they returned to Fire Dragon City. Yi Qinghan once believed that she would never return. Without a doubt, Yi Qinghan had feelings for Empress Rain. However, their feelings had not been made clear. Furthermore, Empress Rain had insisted on leaving that night. Yi Qinghan could only let go, or rather, wait for her return. All these years, Yi Qinghan had been pursued all the way in the Stellar Sea. He basically had no time to care about Empress Rain's matters. Occasionally, he would think of her at night. Despite having lived through the vicissitudes of life, she was still as mischievous as a young girl. He would smile sweetly. After returning to Fire Dragon City, he felt a little sad when he did not see Empress Rain. However, he did not blame her, nor would he send her a message. He believed that everyone had the right to choose their own way of life. Letting go was also a form of happiness. But at that moment, Cherry Blossom's message jolted Yi Qinghan awake. Blue Rain had no feelings for the Blue family. Or rather, it could be said that they hated them. All she wanted was to meet his parents. She had not brought them over at all. After she left, even if she did not return, she could at least send a message to inform them that she was safe, right? But all these years, it was like mud flowing into the sea. Not a single bubble was produced. That could only mean one thing. Something had happened to her. Thinking of Cherry Blossoms and the way she addressed him as brother-in-law, Yi Qinghan's soul trembled slightly. Brother-in-law? Wasn't it obvious that Blue Rain had acknowledged him as a man? Cherry Blossoms, what's the situation? Tell me immediately. Yi Qinghan's soul revolved very quickly. In a second or two, he figured out the crux of the matter. He immediately sent another message to Cherry Blossoms. Cherry Blossom's message came very quickly. Brother-in-law, my cousin will be getting married in half a year. Come in half a year. I have people watching over me. Let's talk when you come to South Ridge City. Her Highness Cherry Blossoms was being watched? Yi Qinghan felt that things were getting tricky. Moreover, the South Mountain Sovereign seemed to be unhappy with him. Although he didn't know the reason, the Southern Mountain Continent was in Kuei's territory. Yi Qinghan didn't ponder for long. He immediately flew toward Ethereal City. On the way, he took out a bamboo hat and covered his face. He circulated his divine crystal to make the muscles on his face change slightly. At the same time, he made his body taller and stronger so that he wouldn't have to kneel down the moment he appeared. He flew to the floating city square. As expected, although a few people saw him, they were slightly stunned, but they didn't pay attention to him. Yi Qinghan teleported directly to Soul Eater City. Entering the city master's mansion, Yi Qinghan transformed back to his normal appearance. He walked to the rooftop and found that only Lord Devour and Yao Ji were there. I reckon that Lord Jiu has gone out to play with the ladies. There are many islands in the north of the Wandering Sea, and the scenery is not bad. My lord! Yi Qinghan bowed slightly and said, I want to make a trip to the Nanling continent. Lord Devour raised his head slightly and said nonchalantly, as long as you don't go to the Supreme Island, the northernmost Mystery Land, or the southernmost Green Mountain, you can go anywhere in the Divine World. Supreme Island, northernmost Mystery Land, Green Mountain? Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows. Supreme Island. Lord Devour had told him that the Star Sovereign was said to be the strongest sovereign in the Divine World. Although he wasn't sure if it was the upper or ninth grade supreme martial artist, Yi Qinghan knew that he couldn't offend them. It was the first time he heard of the latter two places, so he was a little confused. I'll tell you about it later. As long as you don't go to these three places, with your strength, you should be safe in the other places. Lord Devour waved his hand as if he didn't want to say more. Since Lord Devour said so, Yi Qinghan couldn't ask more. He just frowned and said, the Southern Mountain Sovereign seems to have some prejudice against me. Don't worry about him. I'll support you. Go and do your job well. When you have time, cultivate more. Send me a message if you need anything. Lord Devour said faintly. His voice was light, but it was domineering and arrogant. Okay. Yi Qinghan nodded and looked at Lord Devour with gratitude. He knew that Lord Devour didn't like to talk about many things, but he had secretly made many arrangements. Yao Ji stretched out her small hand, yawned, and said with a smile, "Hee hee, I'll go with little Han. I'm bored in the Seoul Emperor Pavilion, so I'm going out for a walk." Lord Devour waved his hand, looked at the two of them indifferently, and didn't say anything. His eyes didn't contain any special meaning, but Yi Qinghan still blushed under his gaze. Giving Yao Ji a look, the two of them walked out of the city lord's mansion. Yi Qinghan's divine consciousness swept over and covered the entire soul-devouring city. Then, he continued to release his divine consciousness and easily found Yu Qingcheng and the others on an island in the north. Lord Jiao was accompanying them. He nodded to Yao Ji, and Yao Ji brought him and teleported. "Brother." The girls were looking at the strange scenery on the island. Suddenly, Yi Qinghan and Yao Ji appeared. Yi Qingyu was pleasantly surprised and rushed over, holding his hand with a sweet smile on her face. "I'm going to the South Mountain Continent. Do you want me to go with you? Or do you want to go back to Fiery Dragon City? Of course, you can also play in the soul-devouring city." Yi Qinghan rubbed Yi Qingyu's head affectionately, asking for their opinions. Without exception, all of them said in unison that they wanted to go with Yi Qinghan. They didn't know why Yi Qinghan was going to the South Mountain Continent. But in their eyes, Yi Qinghan was the symbol of invincibility. Even if he went to the South Mountain Continent for business, they could go sightseeing. Why wouldn't they go with him? "Xiaohei, I'm going to the South Mountain Continent soon. Do you want to stay in the soul-devouring city with Shui? Also about the marriage proposal. Is it now or after I come back?" Then, Yi Qinghan used soul telepathy to send a message to Xiaohei, who was on the drifting island not far away. In the end, not long after, Little Black brought Li Shui and flew over quickly. His attitude was clear. Yi Qinghan could only send a message to Lord Devour. Lord Devour said that it was fine and that Xiaohei should go with him to relax. As for the marriage proposal, they would talk about it after they came back. Yi Qinghan smiled helplessly. With Yao Ji's help, they teleported to the public square's teleportation array and went to the Fiery Dragon City. Looking at the situation, they wouldn't be gone for long, but it was still good to make arrangements. Since Lord Devour had spoken and she was supporting him, Yi Qinghan wasn't that worried. At most, he would just snatch her again. Anyway, it wasn't like he hadn't done it before. After returning to the Fiery Dragon City, he summoned Lei Jun and the Eminent Elders. Lei Jun and the Eminent Elders smiled bitterly, but they didn't dare to say anything. After the Fiery Dragon City was built, the city lord didn't even show up in the city, let alone manage it. Was this his city or theirs? Yi Qinghan told Yi Sahan to learn how to manage the city from Lei Jun, and to cultivate when she had time. He also told Yu Qingcheng to give him the unfettered ring. There were a few Soul Emperor diagrams inside, and he could comprehend them and cultivate. Also, he told Peach not to go to the Star Sea. It wouldn't be long before the Peach Blossom Venerable came to find him. Unsurprisingly, Fireworks wanted to go with them. What was strange was that the Venerable Rain Duanfei said that there was nothing to do on the Rain Butterfly Island, so he left Leijin to manage the Fiery Dragon City. Seeing Rain Duanfei's sweet face, Lei Jun's awkward smile, and Yin Ling's slightly angry glare at Lei Jun, Fireworks was embarrassed. Yi Qinghan secretly gave Lei Jun a thumbs up. Lei Jun looked like a crude old man with a bad temper. He didn't expect him to be so good at playing with women. He got the hang of it so quickly. Chapter 989. In the southernmost black water city of the ethereal continent, ever since the ethereal sovereign and Jiawu gave the order to kill the god bandits of the Blood Night Sea, countless formidable martial artists gathered in Blackwater City and witnessed another grand occasion. A group of exquisite beauties suddenly descended upon this small city, and the tens of thousands of martial artists in the city plaza were all shocked silly. Although all the women had their faces covered, their graceful figures and the natural charm they exuded were enough to steal the souls of tens of thousands of people. It wasn't strange to see one or two eager beauties, but it was shocking to see a group of them. However, before the crowd could see clearly, the group disappeared. Everyone was shocked again. Those who could instant shift were all supremacies. They quickly wiped the saliva from the corner of their mouths and became fearful. A dragon boat suddenly appeared on the shore of the Blood Night Sea and shot forward like a sharp arrow, breaking through the waves. For this trip, Yi Qinghan gathered 2 peak stage 6th grade war gods to accompany him. He couldn't possibly drive the dragon boat himself. And of course, he couldn't let a group of women do the hard work. Yi Qinghan let the women find their own rooms and settle them in the front hall. He turned the shield inside the dragon boat transparent so that they could enjoy the beautiful scenery outside. They took out the delicacies and drinks stored in their interspatial rings and chatted while eating. The atmosphere was very pleasant. Xiaohei didn't say anything, and Li Shui, who was at the side, also looked at the crowd with a smile. Yi Qinghan didn't bother about him. Although he didn't say anything, his mood was obviously much better. He would probably be able to get rid of this shadow after a period of time. The women chatted harmoniously, but Yi Qinghan could clearly feel that there was some tension between the Fire Dragon faction led by Yu Qingqing and the Divine Realm faction led by Yao Ji. What was strange was that Yi Yaorao seemed to have joined Yu Qingqing's side, while Yin Ling, who was originally from the Fire Dragon continent, joined Yao Ji's Divine Realm faction. Luckily, Yao Ji and Yu Qingqing had the demeanor of a married woman and wouldn't openly start a war. However, this sour taste made Yi Qinghan feel a little uncomfortable. Because of this, Yi Qinghan despised himself. Why did he have to pester so many women? This wasn't right. This was not good. But in the blink of an eye, it seemed that they were the ones pestering him, right? Well, I can't blame him for this. I can only blame myself for being too outstanding. At night, when the demonic moon rose, Yi Qinghan had an even bigger headache. Deep into the night, the women didn't greet Yi Qinghan. They all went to their own rooms, as if they had discussed this beforehand. In the end, even Li Shui, Air, and Little Firework went to Firework's room to whisper. Only Yi Qinghan and Xiaohei were left in the spacious hall, staring at each other. Yi Qinghan and Xiaohei looked at each other and said with a bitter smile, "Xiaohei, you said that after you transform into a human, you will have many wives. Now you know the pain of our boss. It's not a good thing to have too many women." Xiaohei raised his eyebrows, and his eyes showed a trace of depression. However, he was much more quick-witted. He said with a crying face, "Boss, what are you saying? You are saying that you are in pain, but also happy. I'm suffering." Shui Air said that if I dare to learn from you and have many wives, she will castrate me and ask her father to hammer me to death. All right, boss, what do you mean by castrate? Castrate? This is a rather skilled job. Simply put, she will cut off the thing you pee on. If she is more ruthless, she will cut off your balls as well. Yi Qinghan blushed with shame. Li Shui Air looked like a little lady, but he didn't expect her to be so violent. Like father, like daughter. It seemed like Venerable Li Quan was also gentle on the surface, but he was a violent maniac. Xiaohei suddenly felt a chill in his crotch. His eyes widened, and he covered his crotch with both hands. His face was full of fear. Then, he thought of something. His expression changed, and he chuckled. He said quietly, "Boss, you scared me. We are gods. With divine crystals, we can just cut off this thing and grow it back." Yi Qinghan looked at Xiaohei with disdain. He said, "What if it grows back and is useless? Not as good as before? Looks like this is a problem." Xiaohei frowned. He muttered to himself for a long time before glancing at the room that Li Shui Air had entered. He said in a low voice, "Looks like I can only secretly raise a few beauties in the future. I can't let Shui Air know. Boss, you have to help me hide this. If Shui Air finds out, she will ask her father to hammer me. Even my sister-in-law can't help me. Get lost." Yi Qinghan frowned and said firmly, "Deal with your own matters on your own. I can't help you with this. If I help you, and Li Quan comes to hammer me, should I fight or not?" When Xiaohei heard this, he pouted like a little wife. He said after a long time, "Boss, you are not loyal. What happened to sharing weal and woe?" F***CK. Black lines appeared on Yi Qinghan's forehead. This brat hasn't even gotten his hands on Shui yet, and he's already thinking of other girls. He's even prepared to hide a mistress in his house and raise a mistress. You still want to get Li Shui heir first. I think you haven't succeeded yet, right? Yi Qinghan suddenly chuckled. He picked up a cup of tea and moved closer. His expression was as wretched as it could be. F***CK, boss. How do you even know this? Xiao He blushed. He lowered his head and rubbed his hands. After a long time, he said in a mosquito-like voice, I almost succeeded. But I entered the wrong cave and was slapped by Shui Air. She said it hurts so much, she doesn't want to do it with me anymore. Buffed. Yi Qinghan was just about to drink his tea when he spat it out. He held his stomach and laughed out loud. Buzz! At this time, the shield of Fireworks' room flashed. Fireworks and Li Shui Air poked their heads out. Fireworks asked, Big Brother Yi, what are you guys talking about? You seem to be having a good time. Yi Qinghan and Xiao Hei's faces instantly returned to normal. They sat up straight, and their faces were full of righteousness. Yi Qinghan nodded and said, Yes, we are talking about training. I am teaching Xiao Hei how to train. Xiao Hei is like this, right? Xiao Hei nodded seriously and said, Yes, we are talking about training. Don't make it up. Men talk about important things. Women don't make it up. Go back, go back. Big brother, let's continue. Don't laugh. I'm a bit stupid. You say this 9-soul rotation? Fireworks smiled sweetly at Yi Qinghan, then turned around and walked into the room. That beautiful and pure smile caused Yi Qinghan's heart to flutter. He thought to himself, when will I be able to take care of this girl? It's a pity that there are so many people here. It's not easy to do so. Li Shui glared at Little Black fiercely, and Little Black immediately shriveled up. He put on a smiling face and kept giving her hints. When Yi Qinghan's eyes swept over, he returned to his domineering look. He looked at Li Shui coldly and scolded. What are you looking at? Why aren't you going back? After Li Shui went back to her room, Yi Qinghan nodded and patted Xiao Hei's shoulder. Good job, Xiao Hei. A man should be domineering. When you make Li Shui obedient, it will be easy for you to pick up girls and get concubines. Sigh. Xiao Hei remembered Li Shui's fierce look and withered again. He sighed and said, I'm afraid when the time comes, it will be me who will be obedient. Chapter 990. The dragon boat was very fast, and the Blood Night Sea had been wiped out by the ethereal continent's formidable martial artists. There were almost no large god bandit legions left, and the journey was smooth. Within a month, they reached the Blood Night continent's Autumn Wind City. After arriving at Autumn Wind City, Yi Qinghan asked the enchantress to send most of them to the Illusion Palace to cultivate and rest. The Illusion Palace was the #1 divine artifact below the God Emperor. It would be a pity not to let the girls use such a good thing. The girls were also very tempted by this legendary spatial divine artifact. After staying in the Blood Night Sea for a month, the girls were satisfied, especially Yu Qingqing and Yi Yaorao. Once they heard that they could enter the Illusion Palace, they were overjoyed. In the end, only Yi Qingwu, Yi Qingyu, the enchantress, and Xiao Hei were left. Yi Qingwu and Yi Qingyu refined divine crystals and found it hard to improve their cultivation. The enchantress was sick of staying in the Illusion Palace. The 5 of them disguised themselves and flew into the Autumn Wind City. The 2 peak stage 6th grade war gods were kept in the War Emperor Palace. Outside, Yi Qinghan didn't want to expose his identity. Hence, he didn't let the enchantress teleport him. Along the way, although the enchantress and Yi Qingyu's hot bodies attracted a lot of attention, it wasn't as sensational as it was in Blackwater City. Yi Qinghan didn't use the token to teleport like he did in the ethereal continent. Instead, he handed over the divine stones. He didn't lack divine stones. First, he teleported to the main city of the Yellow Liang Prefecture, which belonged to the Autumn Wind City. Then he teleported to the westernmost region of the Blood Night continent, which was closest to the Soul Emperor Pavilion. The teleportation array was like taking a plane. It was very fast. In just half a day, the 5 crossed the entire Blood Night continent and went out to sea again. On the Blood Night continent, they saw many races that Yi Qinghan had never seen before. They also saw the unique characteristics of the Blood Knight continent. Not only the Blood Knight army, but even ordinary martial artists liked to wear blood-red battle armor. This time, they headed straight for the South Mountain continent and didn't pass by the Soul Emperor Island. As the Soul Emperor Island was within the Starry Sea, they had to take a detour. 1.5 months later, Yi Qinghan finally stepped into the southernmost city of the Southern Mountain continent, Green River City. As soon as he stepped into the South Ridge continent, Yi Qinghan felt that the temperature of the South Ridge continent was much higher than the Ethereal continent and the Blood Knight continent. Although a divine realm martial artist did not really care about this temperature, it was not a big deal. However, he was a martial artist from the Southern Mountain continent. He was obviously pretending to be cool. His skin was also slightly tanned. The surrounding scenery was also very different. Many of the men here liked to wear only a pair of tight pants, revealing their strong, naked upper bodies. They preferred to braid their hair into small braids, which was very exotic. The women here all wore very little. It was common to see strange clothes that exposed their entire backs. Moreover, they all liked to wear short skirts. Many of the women's skirts were even short to their buttocks. Moreover, the women here all looked very bold and unrestrained. Their eyes were fiery like wild horses, full of wildness. That seductive gaze seemed to be waiting for a man to control and gallop. This made things difficult for Yi Qinghan. The Enchantress and Yi Qingyu did not care so much. However, whenever Yi Qinghan's eyes turned and landed on those women, he would feel a sharp pain in his waist. Yi Qingwu's fiery temper did not care if you were a god king, a god emperor, or a 9th-grade war god. She was not in a good mood, so she flipped out first. Xiaohe, on the other hand, was watching happily. Li Shui had entered the illusory palace to experience the legendary divine weapon. He was like a wild bull, and no one cared about him. His pair of quick-witted eyes darted around. From time to time, he would wink at the passing beauties and give them spinach. Yi Qinghan did not explain to the women what he was doing. The women did not ask either. After all, Yi Qinghan had come in such a hurry, so something must have happened. The women could do whatever they wanted with trivial matters, but they did not dare to refute Yi Qinghan when it came to important matters. Yi Qinghan did not waste any time on the road and went straight to Nanling City. He also made the Enchantress and the others, including Xiaohe, change their appearances. The Rain Empress's matter was very strange. The Rain Empress did not send a message, but Cherry Blossoms sent a message. From her tone, it seemed that Cherry Blossoms did not send a message. Also, Cherry Blossoms said that she was also being monitored. Although Yi Qinghan's current strength and Lord Devour's confidence, he did not dare to act rashly. Yi Qinghan was not afraid of any expert in the Nanling continent. However, it was best not to act rashly before he understood the situation. It would not be too late to take action after he entered the village and understood the situation. Nanling City was huge, and it was even hotter. The entire city was built in yellow, just like a big city in the desert. There were more warriors in the square, and their attire was even more revealing. Some women were only wearing a doo-doo, revealing their tan-colored, voluptuous bodies. It was a ghastly sight. Yi Qinghan found a relatively large restaurant in a northern corner near the square. He booked the most luxurious floor and made it clear that no one was allowed to disturb him unless he summoned them. After settling down, Yi Qinghan made the Enchantress return to the Dream Palace. He brought out the few who were not in meditation. After all, they were here to have fun. It was not too late to go back and cultivate in the future. However, Yi Yaorao and Yu Qingcheng were in seclusion. Apparently, they had comprehended something. Fireworks, Yinling and Li Shui came out and scanned Nanling City with their divine senses. Seeing the exotic atmosphere that was obviously different from the Misty continent, they became excited and wanted to go out and play. Yi Qinghan looked at Yi Qingyu helplessly. Yi Qingwu and the Enchantress also seemed to be very interested. He nodded and said to the Enchantress, "Enchantress, bring them out to play. Remember not to cause any trouble. I am here on business. Of course, if anyone causes trouble, shoot them for me. Also, don't expose your identity." If anything happens, send me a message immediately. With that, Yi Qinghan teleported the two-peak 6th grade war gods out of the War Imperial Palace. He made them follow the Enchantress and the others so that they could serve as a deterrent. Xiaohe did not want to go at first. He was prepared to sneak out and pick some wild flowers. However, he did not expect Li Shui to glare at him. He had no choice but to follow behind. The restaurant's highest floor, which was originally noisy, instantly quieted down. Yi Qinghan was the only one there. Yi Qinghan immediately took out his communication jade charm and began sending a message to Cherry Blossoms. He informed her that he had arrived at Nanling City and his exact location. Cherry Blossom's reply was very fast. She said that she would rush over immediately. Her tone was filled with shock and joy, as though she never expected Yi Qinghan to arrive so quickly. Yi Qinghan arrived quickly, but Cherry Blossoms arrived even faster. In just an hour, Yi Qinghan sensed a few people rushing upstairs. Yi Qinghan hurriedly prepared to open the door to his room to welcome Cherry Blossoms. Unexpectedly, Cherry Blossoms suddenly stopped when she reached the staircase. She coldly berated the two maidservants and guards beside her. "I'm going to meet a friend. Wait here. His Highness, His Majesty has requested us to protect you." The two maidservants did not dare say a word. As for one of the guards, he glanced at the tightly shut door. His eyes revealed a gloomy glint as he said lightly, "Dagwa, what is this place? Who dares harm me? If you dare follow me in, I don't mind cleaving off your feet." Cherry Blossoms bellowed angrily as she glared at the guard with killing intent. She stormed into the room. Yi Qinghan's expression sank. From the looks of it, the matter was truly troublesome. Immediately, a gush of air emitted from the surface of his body, turning his body into a blur. Then, he opened the door and allowed Cherry Blossoms to enter. He immediately deactivated the barrier and released his celestial domain. Of course, even without releasing his celestial domain, with Yi Qinghan's insights into spatial dimension laws, he could instantly detect any probing with his perception through the spatial fluctuations. Cherry Blossoms did not wear golden armor like before. Instead, she wore a skimpy outfit. She wore a green one-piece dress that revealed patches of her wheat-colored skin. She had a head of blue curly hair and eyes that resembled sapphires. It made her look like a lady from a foreign land. The moment Cherry Blossoms entered, she revealed a delighted expression. She grabbed Yi Qinghan's hand and said loudly, "Brother-in-law, you are finally here. Quick, save my cousin, my uncle, and my aunt." Chapter 991. Yi Qinghan's eyebrows furrowed. Why did this matter involve Blue Rain's parents? Cherry Blossoms, don't be anxious. Come, sit down and we can talk. Yi Qinghan saw Cherry Blossoms grab his arm in nervousness. Nearly half her body was stuck to his arm, and her ample chest had accidentally touched it. Yi Qinghan was taller than Cherry Blossoms, so he could easily see a patch of white through the hole in her chest. However, he felt a little embarrassed. After all, she was Blue Rain's cousin, which made her his sister-in-law. He gestured for Blue Rain to sit down and poured her a cup of tea before sitting on the lion chair beside her. He asked, "Where is Blue Rain now?" Her Highness Cherry Blossoms drank a mouthful of water. She knew that Yi Qinghan was asking about serious matters. She hurriedly explained in detail. Immortal Su Manor is south of Nanling City. It's separated by 2 prefectures. The Blue family is the ruler of Immortal Su Manor. They are also one of the 3 major families of Nanling Continent. Yi Qinghan nodded. Empress Rain had mentioned this to him before, so he had some impression of it. He continued asking, "Where are Blue Rain's parents?" Her Highness Cherry Blossoms shook her head and said, "I don't know." Yi Qinghan had a vague feeling when he heard that. Clearly, Empress Rain's parents had been held hostage, forcing Empress Rain to marry. A hint of anger flashed in his eyes. How dare they snatch my woman? How heaven-defying. He looked at Cherry Blossoms and said coldly, "Who wants to marry Blue Rain?" Cherry Blossoms turned a little embarrassed. After a moment, she said, "It's an elder of mine. According to the rules of the family, I have to call him second grandpa. He is the current king of Nanling City, the current head of the Ying family, solitary Ying Chung. Back then, Blue Rain's cousin had an engagement with him. Your second grandpa? Yi Ching-han rubbed his nose and felt a little dizzy. Cherry Blossom's second grandpa wanted to marry Cherry Blossom's cousin? What the F ** K was going on? And there was an engagement back then? However, Yi Ching-han recalled the story that the Rain Empress had told her all those years ago. The Rain Empress had fallen into the entrance of the southern mountains of God Seal Valley because she was escaping from a marriage. Cherry Blossoms turned even more embarrassed as she explained with a blushing face. Our family is huge. The monarch has hundreds of wives and many children. The Ying family also has many direct disciples. The founding grandmother of the Lan family was actually a daughter of the monarch. My family had always been close to the Lan family, and the Lan family often had marriages with the Ying family. According to seniority, Blue Rain is my older cousin. Yes, several hundred. That animal Ying K. When Yi Ching-han heard this, he blurted it out. Then he realized that the person in front of him was Ying Kuei's granddaughter. He quickly corrected himself and said, "Well, what I mean is that your monarch is a bit of a playboy." "Oh, right. I've met your monarch before." "You met my monarch before?" When Cherry Blossoms heard Yi Ching-han curse, her expression turned embarrassed. However, when she heard the last sentence, she was extremely surprised. Then, she seemed to recall something as her eyes lit up. She tugged at Yi Ching-han's hand and said excitedly, "That's right, brother-in-law. You are now a monarch. You are so impressive. I have a question for you." "Go ahead and ask," Yi Ching-han said helplessly as he looked at Cherry Blossom's eyes that were filled with stars. Cherry Blossoms leaned closer and asked with a look of reverence, "How did you become a monarch? You weren't a divine emperor when I left, right?" Yi Ching-han said with a smile, "I figured out a high-level mystery, eternal space. This mystery is actually willpower." Cherry Blossom's eyes lit up as she asked again. Then, as the youngest monarch, "How did you feel? Did you feel pressured? How did you feel back then?" Yi Ching-han glanced at his left arm as a dark cloud hung over his head. However, he pretended not to see Cherry Blossoms. All he could do was give a random answer. It was all right. There was some pressure. I'm in a pretty good mood now. How could he be wrong? At that moment, Cherry Blossom's entire chest was pressing against his arm that was placed on the chair's armrest. The two meatballs were rubbing against his arm, but Yi Ching-han could not pull them out, much less remind him. Then, as a monarch, do you have any hobbies now? Cherry Blossoms ignored Yi Ching-han's expression of pain and happiness as she continued pressing with her eyes glowing. Hobbies? Nothing much. I just want to wander around, read some books, and play some musical instruments. Yi Ching-han was rendered even more speechless. Why did Cherry Blossom seem like those crazy groupies from his previous life? Play musical instruments? You like musical instruments too? What musical instruments do you like? Let me tell you, brother-in-law, I know many musical instruments. I can play the zither, and I even play the flute. You know how to play the flute? Let's study it another day. All right. By the way, brother-in-law, your status is different now. Are there many girls wooing you now? Are there any beauties that suddenly climb into your bed in the middle of the night? Not at the moment. Brother-in-law, you have to be careful in South Mountain City. Girls like that are very open. If they were to learn of your identity, it would be terrible. Stop. Cherry Blossoms, stop for a moment. Aren't we going off topic? Let's talk about serious matters first. Yi Ching-han could not stand it any longer as he pulled his hand out. Cherry Blossom's charming face kept inching closer to his face. The fragrance of a young girl inundated his olfactory senses, and with the two meatballs constantly rubbing against each other, it made Yi Ching-han's abdomen flush with blood. Yi Ching-han had never paid much attention to restraining himself in this direction, but at that moment, he had no choice but to restrain himself. He forcefully stopped her. "Oh, brother-in-law, sorry. I got a little excited for a moment." When Yi Ching-han stopped her, Cherry Blossoms realized that most of her body was leaning against Yi Ching-han. Their faces were about a finger's length apart. In addition, Yi Ching-han had suddenly retracted his arm, jolting her awake. She knew what had happened. Her face turned as red as a monkey's, but as her sapphire eyes were filled with embarrassment. Ahem, ahem. Yi Qinghan coughed lightly in embarrassment as he circulated his divine powers to repress the evil desires in him. Only then did he say, "Tell me everything that happened." "Okay." Cherry Blossoms lowered her head and answered softly in embarrassment. After a moment of silence, she quickly began her explanation. Yi Qinghan finally understood the ins and outs of the matter after talking for almost an hour. In fact, the situation was very simple. In the past, when Blue Rain ran away from the marriage, solitary Ing Chung was the southern mountain continent's prince. At that time, he was so angry that he almost destroyed Su Immortal City. Afterwards, when the Lan family's ancestor appeared and the Ing family spoke, the matter was dropped. After that, solitary Sakura alone might have been provoked and directly went in a closed-door seclusion. A closed-door seclusion. He said that he would not come out of seclusion until he became a venerable. Unexpectedly, his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. He came out of closed-door cultivation 100 years ago and went in a closed-door cultivation for hundreds of thousands of years. He actually reached the venerable realm, and it was a superior venerable realm at that. The entire Nanling continent was shocked. The South Mountain Sovereign was also alarmed. He specially summoned him and gave the sovereign order, making him the current head of the Ying family. Who would have thought that Blue Rain would come out of Sealed God Valley and appear in Flame Dragon City? Not long after, Lonely Cherry found out about this and began paying close attention to Blue Rain's whereabouts. Before Blue Rain could return to the southern mountain continent, his parents had suddenly disappeared. At this time, Lonely Ying gave the Lan family an ultimatum. When Lan Yu returned, she had to marry him, or else the Lan family would be annihilated. The strange thing was, the South Mountain Sovereign had tacitly agreed to this matter. After Blue Rain returned home, not only did she not see her parents, but the family also brought up the matter of marriage. Blue Rain refused resolutely and began searching for clues to find her parents. But after searching for a long time, they couldn't find a single clue. In the end, Lonely Cherry appeared and said that if she married him, he would definitely help find her parents. Blue Rain understood. Helpless, they couldn't bear to see the Lan family annihilated. In the end, they could only tearfully agree. The wedding date was between the two Moon Queen. The matter was very clear. Not just Yi Qinghan, but probably everyone in the audience knew that Blue Rain's parents were in Lonely Cherry's hands. And the troublesome part of this matter was the South Mountain Sovereign. He actually supported Lonely Cherry's actions. Yi Qinghan sighed deeply. He could imagine Blue Rain's feelings. In such a helpless situation, Her Highness Cherry Blossom just so happened to like to go to the Lan family to play. The two of them were kindred spirits, so when he had nothing to do, he would talk to Cherry Blossom about his matters. And right now, Cherry Blossom was being watched probably because Lonely Cherry Blossom knew that Cherry Blossom and Blue Rain were on good terms. He also knew about his relationship with Blue Rain. He also understood why Blue Rain hadn't sent him a single message. Because even if Yi Qinghan was a sovereign, this was the southern mountain continent. If Yi Qinghan messed around, her parents and Su Xianqing would definitely be annihilated. Yi Qinghan was silent for a long time. Finally, he suddenly stood up and looked at Cherry Blossom with a burning gaze. He said, "Do you have a way to secretly bring me to Blue Rain?" Chapter 992. This, Cherry Blossom's eyes suddenly lit up. She knew that Yi Qinghan was prepared to take action and was extremely excited. However, she immediately turned worried and said, "The two guards beside me were sent by His Majesty. They say that they are to protect me, but in fact, they are to monitor me. If you were to go to Su Immortal City with me, His Majesty would definitely know. When that happens, it would be disadvantageous to Uncle and the rest. It's fine. As long as your cousin doesn't leave, your uncle and the rest will be extremely safe. Tomorrow, you can directly teleport to Su Immortal City and wait for me in the square. I will instruct you on what to do. Remember, my identity is not to be exposed to anyone." Yi Qinghan said nonchalantly. His tone was filled with confidence. The glimmer in his eyes subconsciously exuded an aura that looked down on the world. "All right, brother-in-law, I'll return first. It will arouse suspicion if I stay here for too long." Cherry Blossom snapped to her senses as she looked at Yi Qinghan with a look of reverence. She seemed to feel relieved after being influenced by Yi Qinghan. She also knew that although the South Mountain Sovereign was basically unaware of Yi Qinghan's arrival, Solitary Sakura would definitely send people to investigate or stir up trouble if Cherry Blossoms acted abnormally. If his identity was exposed and the South Mountain Sovereign was alarmed, the matter would be troublesome. Yi Qinghan nodded. Only then did Cherry Blossom stand up and quickly leave. She was dressed in a green flowery dress that revealed her pink back. It was round and smooth, exuding a healthy glow. She was abnormally sexy. Yi Qinghan's body and face turned blurry once again. As a celestial the Arch-Realm soul cultivator, it was very easy for him to do so. In fact, Yi Qinghan's body didn't change, but in the eyes of others, it felt like a blur. Those whose souls were not as strong as Yi Qinghan's were unable to see his true body. They could not even tell if he was a man or a woman. Mo Xiaoxiao and Empress Rain trembled at the thought. After Cherry Blossoms left, Yi Qinghan stood in front of the window alone. He looked at the people and the heavy traffic outside as he pondered. This matter had to be carefully planned. It would be best if he could avoid a conflict with the South Mountain Sovereign. After all, they were in his territory, and it would be easier for them to meet in the future. Half a day later, the communication jade talisman on his waist vibrated. Yi Qinghan picked it up and smiled bitterly. He understood that Nanling City was the main city of Nanling Continent. It would be strange if there were no problems with so many peerless beauties traveling together. The enchantress had sent a message. She had gotten into a fight with a young master at a scenic spot in the east of Nanling City. The other party was obviously from the Sakura family, a hedonistic son of the Sakura family. "Boss, come here quickly. Someone wants to steal your woman." It didn't take long for Xiao Hei's spiritual transmission to arrive. However, it was clear that Xiao Hei was stirring up trouble, wanting to see the world plunged into chaos. Yi Qinghan had become a monarch. Together with Lord Devourer and the ethereal monarch, there were 3 monarchs of the ethereal continent. In Xiao Hei's mind, the divine world was nothing to be afraid of. Yi Qinghan's body grew taller, and he changed his facial features. He wore a bamboo hat and, after putting on a disguise, walked out leisurely. He did not panic at all. Since he was a hedonistic son, he would at most bring a few 7th-grade guards. With the enchantress around, his safety was guaranteed. Even if the supremacies of the Sakura family were to take action, they clearly would not attack indiscriminately. Along the way, Yi Qinghan took in Nanling City's completely different and exotic scenery as he rushed to the east of the city. There weren't many buildings in the east of the city, but there was a floating palace. It was very ancient and exuded a desolate aura. It was huge, with hundreds of smaller palaces floating in midair. He could see them from afar. It was no wonder the enchantress and company had come here. Nanling Divine Palace? Yi Qinghan's gaze swept across the great hall in the eastern part of the city like a huge dark cloud. He looked at the ancient characters on the great hall and looked at the mystical patterns and diagrams on them. Although he knew that it was an effect created by a restriction that wasn't too complicated, he also knew that it was a miracle used to deceive low-level warriors, but he still felt a little shocked. There were 2 teams of official army guards outside the Divine Palace. They were all 7th-grade war gods. There were more than 100 of them, and at least 20 of them were at the peak of 7th grade. According to the soul connection with Xiao Hei, Yi Qinghan knew that the women were in the palace. He flew toward the entrance of the palace in midair, but he was stopped by the official army guards. He paid 100,000 divine stones and was allowed to pass. He sighed inwardly. He had encountered bandits again. The Sakura family was indeed black-hearted. As soon as he entered the palace, he was greeted by a statue. The statue was vivid and lifelike, just like a real person. It was marked as the god of Nanling City. Countless people in front of him were sincerely kowtowing and praying. Yi Qinghan shook his head and smiled bitterly. He knew the person in the statue. It was the sovereign of Nanling City. Yi Qinghan didn't understand. Why did the person not die, but become a statue to be worshipped? Without stopping at the main hall, Yi Qinghan walked towards a side hall on the left. In the end, he discovered that there were countless side halls, and each of them had a statue or countless statues. There were also countless people kowtowing and praying. After walking through a few more side palaces, Yi Qinghan suddenly raised his eyebrows and stepped aside. Behind him, 7 or 8 warriors, all of whom were 7th-grade war gods, rushed toward him. They rushed forward hastily. Yi Qinghan sneered and followed them. After walking through 2 or 3 side palaces, they came to a relatively large one. The hall suddenly became crowded. They were all excited and gathered in several circles. When the 7 or 8 warriors rushed over aggressively, the crowd in front of them immediately parted to make a path. Yi Qinghan also quietly followed them to the center of the crowd. With a simple sweep of his divine sense, he discovered the situation inside. The enchantress and the others all had their faces covered with a light veil. 2 guards at the peak of 6th grade stood on both sides. Interestingly, the one standing at the front was not the enchantress, but Ling. Moreover, Ling was pointing at the young master opposite her and scolding him like a lioness. In front of the ladies was a young man in a fancy robe. At this moment, half of his face had a clear palm print. He was surrounded by 4 guards, all of whom were 6th-grade war gods. There was no need to inquire about this kind of scene. It was obvious that the beauties of these women were being coveted. As a result, the young master was slapped by Ling. With 2 guards at the peak of 6th grade beside them, the young master didn't dare to attack them, so he called for help. Yi Qinghan was somewhat surprised that the Nanling City's prefecture army didn't move. Yi Qinghan immediately sent a voice transmission to the enchantress. After asking, the young master revealed his identity. He was a direct descendant of the Ying family, Ying Shueishue. He claimed to be one of the top 10 young masters of the Nanling continent. Yi Qinghan didn't move. As he watched the show, he sent a voice transmission to Cherry Blossoms. The scene was very boring. It was nothing more than the impressive young master Ying Shueishue flaunting his prowess when he saw people coming. He pointed at Ling and scolded and threatened her. He wanted Ling to lick his toes and get everyone to sleep with him for a few nights. If not, he wouldn't be able to leave Nanling City. Moments later, Yi Qinghan finished sending the message. He also knew why the prefecture army didn't move. He didn't stand on ceremony and directly sent a voice transmission to the enchantress. All right, enchantress, don't waste your breath on him. Get them out of the temple. As long as they aren't killed, you can do whatever you want with them. Slap their mother hard. Chapter 993. Yao Ji's eyes lit up. Her limpid eyes glowed, and the charm that could charm people to death was released inadvertently. Instantly, the eyes of everyone in the hall became dazed, and the sound of people swallowing their saliva was heard. Many martial artists in Nanling Continent liked to wear tight pants. As a result, many people began to erect tents on their lower bodies. Sir, let's go out and talk. It's not convenient to do things in this temple. Yao Ji twisted her snake-like body and walked to the front. Ling sensibly retreated to the back. Yao Ji was wearing a white palace dress and a silk scarf. Her whole body was covered up. However, the charm of the devil and succubus clan was natural. Every move she made was full of charm, especially that sweet voice. It even hooked the souls of everyone in the main hall. Even Xiao He and the 2 peak 6th grade guards were deeply affected. After speaking, Yao Ji walked out just like that. The women looked at each other in surprise, only to see that the people in front of them automatically made way for her. Sakura Chueishue and his men did not move, so they quickly followed her. What made Yi Qinghan feel extremely strange was that when the temptress led the group of people away, all the men in the hall stared at the temptress and followed her. Their movements were numb and their eyes were dull, as if they had all become puppets. But the women were not affected at all. Yao Ji's charm was unparalleled in the world. The dancing beauties were cold-blooded murderers. The dancing beauties lived up to their reputation. If Yi Qinghan's soul strength was not high, he might have followed her in a daze like the others. He sighed inwardly. Yao Ji's charm was really awesome. Yao Ji led the women out of the hall and stood quietly on a small square below. Although the official army guarding the temple saw that the people behind Yao Ji were a little strange, they only looked at them with interest. There was no sign of them coming over to help. Ing Chueshue and his men, as well as countless onlookers, woke up at the same time. There was a commotion. They stared at Yao Ji and were secretly on guard. However, when he remembered that this was Nanling City, Ing Chueshue became bolder. Yao Ji brought the women to stand below and had 2 guards protect them. Her eyes lit up again, and she hooked her finger at young master Ing Chueshue. Ing Chueshue was once again bewitched, and she gave a lewd smile as she stretched out her hands and leapt at Yao Ji in an incredibly lewd manner. Pa! An incomparably resounding slap rang out, jolting everyone awake. Then, an incomparably shocking scene occurred. Young master Ing Chueshue's entire face was deformed. His tall body was sent flying like a golf ball. He turned into a black shadow and flew into the sky in an arc. The black shadow became smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared from everyone's sight. Young master. The expressions of the dozen or so guards changed instantly. They scanned the direction in which Ing Chueshue had disappeared with their divine senses. They discovered that Ing Chueshue had been thrown tens of thousands of meters away by a single palm strike. In the end, he landed in a smelly ditch in the city and passed out. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. 2 figures flew in young master Ing Chueshue's direction like lightning. The rest of the guards unleashed their divine power, and various weapons appeared in their hands. Their murderous aura enveloped the entire small square as they charged at Yao Ji and the others. Countless surrounding cultivators retreated, but their eyes were filled with excitement. It was obvious that they had seen this kind of fight often, and it was very enjoyable to watch the show. Yao Ji also moved. Her entire body transformed into a butterfly and began to dance gracefully in the air. A fragrant wind swept through the entire area. Her figure was extremely enchanting, and her dance was extremely beautiful. As the spectators watched, their vision actually became blurry. After that, their eyes once again became sluggish. This time, it was not only the aggressive guards who were stunned. Even the 100 or so rank 7 official army guards on the Nanling Divine Palace were bewitched. Even Yin Ling, and the other women lost their charm. They were all immersed in this peerless dance. Pa! 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 A few crisp sounds rang out, and everyone was awakened again. Under the horrified gazes of countless people, Ing Chueshue's guards all flew in one direction and finally landed in the same place, in the smelly ditch that Ing Chueshue had fallen into. At this moment, Ing Chueshue was being carried out by the 2 guards. His body was dripping with blood, and there was not a single bone in his body that was intact. All right, have you had enough fun? Yao Ji, take everyone to the Illusion Palace. I have something to do, and I'll call you when I'm done. Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. He did not expect Yao Ji, this peerless beauty, to be so violent. With his eyesight, he could easily see that all the bones in these people had been smashed. Not even a single bone in their heads was intact. However, Yao Ji had controlled it very well. Their souls and divine crystals were not injured. Yao Ji received the order and clapped her hands happily. With a wave of her hand, she took the women, Xiao He, and the 2 guards and disappeared from the square. This caused an uproar among the nearby cultivators. A venerable, if she could disappear in an instant, what else could she be? A spatial divine artifact would produce intense spatial fluctuations. Such a beauty and such powerful strength. This woman was indeed a peerless beauty. Everyone began discussing Yao Ji and company with relish. They did not seem to care about Ing Chueshue, who had been sent flying. It was as though it was normal for an Ing family member to be slapped. Furthermore, the guards did not show any signs of taking action. Yes, South Mountain Sovereign's rule can be used in Flame Dragon City in the future. Yi Qing'an obviously knew the reason. After he sent a message to Cherry Blossoms, she had given him a clear reply. She would be fine as long as he was not killed. South Mountain Sovereign had married hundreds of wives. His first generation had thousands of descendants, and there were countless direct descendants and collateral descendants. There were millions of young masters like Ying Shueishue in the entire South Mountain City. The Ying family had many descendants, so there was no way to prevent them from abusing their family's power. There was a period of time when there was constant bloodshed in South Mountain City. The mainland warriors had a terrible impression of South Mountain City, and there were many complaints about the Ying family and South Mountain Sovereign. Finally, when the matter reached South Mountain Sovereign, Inkue issued an order. Unless one was conferred a title by the family, the other descendants were not to mobilize the prefecture army. As long as the Ying family members were not killed, the Ying family was not to seek revenge. Yi Qing'an thought that he had many wives now, together with his family, collateral descendants, and relatives in Flame Dragon City. Flame Dragon City would be extremely lively in the future. South Mountain Sovereign's rule was not bad. If he wanted to snatch women or slap people, he had to rely on his own strength. It was understandable if he was strong enough to slap people, but if he was not strong enough, he deserved it. This way, it could stimulate the descendants to work hard. After Yao Ji and the others left, Yi Qing'an relaxed and strolled around Nanling City, admiring the unique scenery of the city. At night, the scenery in South Mountain City turned even more beautiful, especially the beautiful and unrestrained South Mountains women. It was a unique scenery. After a night of shopping in the city, he enjoyed the good time of solitude. Yi Qing'an did not return to the restaurant. He had met Cherry Blossoms in the restaurant, and with Yao Ji and company committing a crime, there would probably be people investigating the restaurant, right? The next day, Yi Qing'an secretly teleported to Sushin City and continued strolling around the city square. Before long, he saw Her Highness Cherry Blossoms, who was dressed in a fiery red grass skirt, walk out of the teleportation array with 4 guards. Chapter 994. Cherry Blossoms. Take your guards to the southern gate 25 kilometers out of the city. Yi Qing'an sent a voice transmission before he led the way to the southern gate and easily left the city. Not long after, he saw Cherry Blossoms and 4 guards rushing over. The 4 guards were 7th grade war gods. They wore wary expressions and seemed displeased with Miss Cherry Blossoms leaving the city. Yi Qing'an sneered before sending a voice transmission to Cherry Blossoms. Don't resist. I'll put you into my spatial artifact. As he sent the voice transmission, Yi Qing'an's body shot towards the quartet like a bolt of lightning. The quartet was instantly jolted awake as their divine powers surged. Their divine perception radiated in every direction, but their expressions changed suddenly. Their divine perception could see countless soul-poisoned jade sabers shooting at them from every direction. They had seen it before. It was Sue Immortal City's Miss Blue Rain's famous technique, but the person in front of them was clearly a man. So what if you're a soul cultivator? How dare you attack His Highness? You have a death wish. Not only did the quartet not retreat, they charged forward at lightning speed, protecting Cherry Blossoms behind them. The gray armor they wore shimmered with gray light. The 4 beams of gray light fused together to form a gray wall of light. A combined battle array. Yi Qing'an pricked up his brows. A warrior actually dared to defend against a soul skill head-on? With a loud roar, he released his Sky Fiend voice and charged at the quartet. However, he did not put Cherry Blossoms into his spatial artifact. The quartet was delighted when they saw this. This soul cultivator was truly a fool. He actually dared to engage in close combat? Did he think that the soul-poisoned jade sabers could harm the quartet? The gray wall of light trembled as it blocked all the soul-poisoned jade sabers. At that moment, Yi Qing'an had already charged in front of them. The quartet revealed lingering smiles as they brandished the gray swords in their hands. Like 4 venomous snakes, they attacked Yi Qing'an's head and divine crystal. Humph! Yi Qing'an grunted coldly as he suddenly accelerated. He ignored the quartet's attacks as his palms streaked out after images, striking at the quartet's abdomen at lightning speed. Bang bang! As expected, the moment the four swords struck Yi Ching Han, his body suddenly emitted a ball of white light. Under the defense of his origin energy, let alone these weapons, even transcendent-grade god artifacts would find it difficult to injure him. Yi Ching Han's hand gently patted the abdomen of the four, easily sending them flying. At the same time, he circulated his origin energy to his hand and unleashed his soul fusion battle skill, causing their souls to tremble in that instant. Then, he forcefully sealed their divine crystals. Xiao! Yi Ching Han did not stop. He flew toward the four of them at lightning speed and threw them into the War Imperial Palace as if he were grabbing a sack. Seventh-grade war gods and guards who specialized in joint attacks, the Ying family definitely had their soul jade slips. If the four of them died, it would alert the enemy. It was better to lock them up first. As for when they would be released, it was hard to say. Wow, brother-in-law, you're so strong. You don't seem to have used your willpower, right? These four are experts in joint attacks. Even an ordinary supremacy would find it difficult to kill them. Cherry Blossoms was dazzled by the sight. She had the strength of a peak god king, so it was impossible for her to keep up with the battle between the seventh-grade war gods and Yi Ching Han. In the blink of an eye, the four of them had vanished. Yi Ching Han was standing beside him with a smile. Haha, this place isn't far from Nanling City. If I had used my willpower, I would have alerted your lord. I launched a sneak attack, and with the four of them being wary of you, it wouldn't have been difficult to take down a minor character like him. Yi Ching Han said without a care. In fact, at that instant, Yi Ching Han's soul was circulating at a terrifying speed. He instantly used a few offensive techniques. It was normal for soul attacks to achieve such an effect when paired with origin energy. Wait! Yi Ching Han suddenly vanished from his spot. Moments later, he appeared out of thin air again. This time, he was wearing the gray armor of a guard. At the same time, the muscles on his face and facial features changed, turning him into an icy cold, burly man. The two did not speak further, as they transformed into two shadows and flew towards Su Immortal City. With Her Highness Cherry Blossom leading the way, the journey was unimpeded. The two entered Su Immortal City's Su Immortal Abode, the Lan family's manor. Su Immortal Abode was huge, and it was filled with a festive atmosphere. Many places were decorated with lanterns and colorful lights. It was as though they were preparing for Blue Rain's wedding. The Lan family was extremely respectful to Her Highness Cherry Blossom's arrival, but it did not alarm the entire manor. Clearly, Cherry Blossom was a frequent visitor, so no one was surprised. A beautiful middle-aged woman who looked like a housekeeper came over with a chuckle to pay her respects. She brought Miss Cherry Blossom directly to the East Courtyard, Blue Rain Court. Every time Her Highness Cherry Blossom came, she would go straight to Blue Rain Court. Everyone in the manor knew that she liked her cousin a lot. Blue Rain Court was heavily guarded outside. Countless maidservants walked in and out, making it appear as though it was a large family. Yi Ching Han kept following behind Cherry Blossom coldly. He did not fake a smile. When people bowed at him, he did not even look at them. He was extremely domineering. However, no one dared to object. They knew that he was a special guard that the King of South Mountain had assigned to Miss Cherry Blossom. Sorry, Your Excellency. You can't enter. This is the family head's order. Men are not allowed to enter. Please forgive us. When Yi Ching Han entered Blue Rain Court, an accident happened. A 7th-grade guard commander outside the court stopped Yi Ching Han. As for Cherry Blossom, she frowned as well. Clearly, she knew of the family head's order. Bam! The answer to the duo was a fist the size of a casserole pot from Yi Ching Han. Yi Ching Han suddenly attacked. His speed was as fast as lightning. Furthermore, Soul Annihilation attacked at the same time. The 7th-grade guard commander was caught off guard as he was sent flying, smashing through an artificial mountain behind him. Shoo! Shoo! Countless guards transformed into shadows as they flew over. Instantly, they surrounded Yi Ching Han. However, their eyes were fixed on the housekeeper in front of Cherry Blossom. It was as though they were waiting for her order to take down Yi Ching Han. "Umph, come if you don't want to die." Cherry Blossom was momentarily taken aback. She never expected Yi Qinghan to attack directly, just as she was at a loss as to what to do. Yi Qinghan grunted coldly. At the same time, the power of origins appeared in his hand. His gaze was like a blade as it swept across the guards with surging, killing intent. He bellowed coldly, "By His Majesty's orders, Her Highness is to protect her when she's out. Anyone who dares obstruct me from carrying out my mission will be killed without mercy." Whoosh! 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 Countless guards retreated in horror as they looked at the power of origins in Yi Qinghan's hand and his murderous gaze. No one dared to approach him. This was an envoy with His Majesty's orders. Killing him would be pointless. Most importantly, he was a supremacy. "My lord, please forgive us. Please come in." The female housekeeper bowed and smiled. She personally invited Yi Qinghan in. Cherry Blossom glanced at Yi Qinghan as her eyes shimmered. The guards looked at Yi Qinghan's stalwart figure and sighed inwardly. Could this be Cherry Blossom's secret? The top secret guard was actually a supremacy. The Ying family was indeed extremely powerful. One had to know that the Lan family was one of the 3 major family clans of the South Mountain Continent, but they only had 2 supremacies. Blue Rain Pavilion's scenery was beautiful. There was a huge yard inside that was planted with blue flowers. The pavilion was mainly light blue in color. There were tiny blue bells hanging on the curtains and windows. When the wind blew gently, it produced a pleasant sound. Cherry Blossoms and Yi Qinghan strode in, but the housekeeper did not enter. All she did was instruct the maidservants waiting outside not to provoke the malefic guard. If not, they should not blame her for not warning them if they died. After giving a few more instructions, she left leisurely. The pavilion was mainly light blue in color. The moment he walked in, Yi Qinghan believed that he had arrived at the Rain Emperor Palace. In the huge hall, there were light muslin fluttering everywhere. There were incense sticks burning in the corners, filling the entire hall with a faint fragrance. There were not many furnishings in the room, but it was especially elegant. Yi Qinghan's gaze stopped at the window on the left the moment he entered. He could not tear his gaze away. There was a jade couch placed under the window on the left. A woman dressed in a light blue floral dress had her legs slightly bent. She rested her chin on one hand as she leaned against the window. She looked out at the pool of water in a daze. Her face was very pale, and her 2 beautiful brows were slightly curled up. Her eyes were filled with confusion and sorrow. 2 streaks of tears silently rolled down the corners of her eyes. However, she did not seem to notice them as she allowed them to wet her robe. The beauty rolled up the beaded curtains and sat there with her brows furrowed. However, it was unknown who she hated when she saw the wet tear streaks. Yi Qinghan's cold expression instantly turned even colder. He felt his heart wrench in pain as he felt a lump in his throat. After staring at the rain for a long time, he softly cried out, "Blue Rain, I'm here." Chapter 995. When Yi Qinghan shouted that, his voice did not change. His looks did not change either, but the deep emotions in his eyes could melt the snow in the extreme north of the divine world. Empress Rain trembled as she continued looking at the lotus pond outside the window. However, her eyes lit up. Then she did something that surprised Yi Qinghan and Cherry Blossoms. She turned her head and faced the duo with her round back. Her body was still trembling slightly, but moments later, she stabilized herself. She leisurely turned her head. Her beautiful face did not have a single trace of tears. Her eyes were calm as she glanced at Yi Qinghan before looking at Cherry Blossoms. She released her divine powers and triggered the protective lasers on the wall. Finally, she turned her attention to Yi Qinghan and said lightly, "City Lord Yi, welcome to Su Immortal City as a guest." "Yi, City Lord Yi?" Cherry Blossoms was a little confused. What was wrong with Blue Rain? Why did she suddenly change into a different person? She did not have such an expression when she mentioned Yi Qinghan in the past. Empress Rain glanced at Cherry Blossoms lightly as her eyes revealed a faint look of reproach. She stood up and politely invited the duo to take a seat. She personally went to the coffee table beside her and poured some tea. Her footsteps were very steady and steady. However, when she poured the tea, her hand trembled slightly, spilling the tea outside. Yi Qinghan did not move as he stared intently at Empress Rain. He said coldly, "Blue Rain, stop acting. Your acting isn't good at all." Just as Empress Rain picked up the tea and was about to turn around, her body stiffened. After a moment of surprise, she turned her head and said, "Qinghan, I'm not acting. Didn't Cherry Blossoms tell you? I'm getting married. Forget everything that happened in the past." "Forget? Huh?" Yi Qinghan suddenly burst into laughter, his body bursting with an incomparably tyrannical aura. He strode over, his two thick arms forcefully grabbing the Empress of Rain's shoulders, his eyes staring at her evasive gaze. He angrily shouted. He stared at her evasive gaze and bellowed angrily, "Blue Rain, look at me. Look into my eyes. Let me tell you, you are Yi Qinghan's woman. You were, you are now, and you will always be. Whoever dares to snatch it from me, this young master will kill them even if I have to risk my life. You can only be my person when you are alive, and my ghost when you are dead. Even if the god of heaven or the lord of the underworld wanted to snatch you away, I would still fight them." The domineering roar left Empress Rain and Cherry Blossom's ears ringing. The domineering aura also caused the light muslin in the room to flutter. The entire penthouse was filled with the echoes of Yi Qinghan's furious roar. Cherry Blossom's eyes began to twinkle with tiny stars once again. She looked at Yi Qinghan's muscular shoulders and his sharp gaze. Her tiny heart was pounding like a fawn's. Empress Rain's eyes lit up, and two streams of tears fell silently once again. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and averted her eyes again. She shook her head and wriggled her lips as she said, "Qinghan, don't be impulsive. This is not a place where you can act recklessly. Hurry up and leave." "Why can't I act recklessly? Do you believe that I'll storm my way to South Mountain City with you?" Yi Qinghan grunted coldly in an extremely domineering manner. However, he was somewhat puzzled. After pondering for a moment, he turned to look at Cherry Blossoms. When Cherry Blossoms was swept by Yi Qinghan, she suddenly slapped the chair and jumped up. She said with a chuckle, "Cousin, I forgot to tell you something. Brother-in-law is now an invincible 9th grade god of war. I originally thought that brother-in-law would not come, so I didn't tell you, afraid that you would be sad." "What? 9th grade?" Blue Rain instantly turned pale. Her eyes shimmered as she looked at Yi Qinghan and then at Cherry Blossoms. Finally, she looked back at Cherry Blossoms and said, "The two of you must have colluded to lie to me, right? This matter is not to be joked about." Yi Qinghan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Indeed, if an ordinary person were to suddenly hear of this matter, they would definitely not dare to believe it. He did not explain. Instead, he released Empress Rain, and with a jolt, the power of origins swirled around him. Instantly, the entire room lit up. Power of origins. Heavens! Blue Rain covered her mouth in astonishment. Her face was filled with shock. With the power of origins enveloping his body, he could already reach the level of a superior grade supremacy. When Blue Rain left Flame Dragon City, Yi Qinghan was still a mere godly monarch. How did he change in a blink of an eye? At that moment, she believed Cherry Blossom's words. She gulped and said, "Little man, what happened to you?" "It's very simple." Yi Qinghan retracted his power of origins and said with a smile, "Do you remember when I left Godseal Valley? Back then, I fused with a mystic that had never been fused in the divine world. Then, there was a worldly phenomenon in Dripping Spring City. In fact, I was bestowed with the power of origins back then." Empress Rain nodded. Of course, she remembered. If not for Yi Qinghan fusing with such a mystical mystic, she would still be in Godseal Valley. At that moment, she completely believed Yi Qinghan's words. Her eyes were filled with excitement. Like a little girl, she looked at Yi Qinghan in adoration, waiting for him to continue explaining. Her entire body was filled with joy, as though she had come back to life. Yi Qinghan's muscles trembled, and he returned to his original appearance. A smile appeared on his face. This was the true blue rain. Even after experiencing the vicissitudes of time, she was still as pure as a little girl. This was the most attractive part of Blue Rain. He stroked Blue Rain's blue hair and continued. Do you still remember one of the 3 conditions to leave Godseal Valley? To comprehend the laws of space? Eternal space. Empress Rain blurted out. She remembered it clearly. Yi Qinghan nodded and said, Yes, I comprehended eternal space in the Soul Emperor Pavilion. Eternal space is actually willpower. That's why I have willpower. I reached the 9th grade and was once again bestowed with origin power by the laws of heaven and earth. Yi Qinghan's explanation was very simple, but Blue Rain completely understood and believed him. She stared blankly at Yi Qinghan. She stared at this person who dared to fantasize about her the first time they met. She always knew that Yi Qinghan was a genius. Sooner or later, he would shine and have his own sky in the divine realm. She never expected that day to come so early and so suddenly. Cherry Blossoms saw Blue Rain staring at Yi Qinghan in a daze. She hurriedly reminded her, Cousin, don't let your thoughts run wild. Hurry and tell brother-in-law about the situation. If we stay here too long, we will arouse suspicion. Yes. Yi Qinghan smiled warmly and said, Although I'm not afraid of your family's monarch, it would be best if this matter could be resolved quietly. Where are Uncle and Annie? As long as we save them, I'll immediately take you far away. The moment Blue Rain mentioned the matter, her expression immediately changed. She turned extremely pale as she felt excruciatingly pained and powerless. She sighed heavily and said, It's useless. It's useless. There's no way to save them. My parents have been imprisoned in City Lord Manor by solitary Sakura. Saving them will definitely alarm the entire City Lord Manor. When that happens, it will definitely alarm the monarch. The monarch likes solitary Sakura the most because the two of them had similar experiences years ago. Didn't you see him directly order him to be the family head? Cherry Blossoms knows that Cherry Blossoms' original family head was a pinnacle supremacy, much stronger than him. Cherry Blossom's expression changed as well. She knew her family situation best. If solitary Sakura were to openly imprison Blue Rain's parents in City Lord Manor, it was impossible for it to not alarm the South Mountain Sovereign. Yi Qinghan sneered as killing intent suffused his eyes. He pulled Blue Rain's hand and walked out. At the same time, he turned his head to Cherry Blossoms and bellowed, In that case, let's go. Let's be direct. Let's go to City Lord Manor and ask for them. Chapter 996. Cherry Blossoms and Empress Rain were given a fright. It was obvious that Yi Qinghan was heading straight for Nanling City. Blue Rain hurriedly dragged Yi Qinghan out as they wriggled their hands in a bid to escape. Trust me, your man will not harm you. I'll handle this matter. Yi Qinghan turned his head to look at Empress Rain with utmost determination. Empress Rain jolted as a resolute look flashed in her eyes. She nodded and stopped struggling. She obediently followed Yi Qinghan. As for Yi Qinghan, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. He looked at Cherry Blossoms and said, Cherry Blossoms, why don't you not walk with us? We will be fine after this, but your days in the family clan will not be easy. Cherry Blossoms pondered for a moment before looking up and giggling. It's fine. I'm sick of this Nanling City. If I really can't stay here any longer, I'll seek refuge with brother-in-law. Brother-in-law, you will not take me in, right? Upon seeing Cherry Blossom's fiery gaze, Yi Qinghan sighed helplessly and ignored her. Just like that, they walked straight out without changing their appearances. The pavilion had activated a soundproof barrier, so the three of them walked out of the pavilion and headed outside without the slightest hindrance. Whoosh! 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 The moment they walked out of the yard, countless gazes swept over. The maidservants outside looked at Yi Qinghan in confusion. Who was this person? Why was he holding her mistress's hand so rudely? The guards at the entrance instantly reacted. Why did this lord's looks change? Furthermore, he actually dared to hold their mistress's hand and walk out? Why was Her Highness Cherry Blossoms following behind them? Was she being held hostage? Shoo! Shoo! Dozens of guards had a change in expression as they instantly blocked the door. Furthermore, they immediately sent voice transmissions. Lord, Mistress can't leave Blue Rain Court. Also, please let go of Mistress's hand. The person who shouted was still the leader of the guards. Although Yi Qinghan had sent him flying, he had not dealt a heavy blow on account of Empress Rain. Although the current situation was very strange, the guard leader did not dare to be too arrogant and spoke with a slightly polite tone. Get lost! How could Yi Qinghan be polite to them? His face was cold, and a murderous aura poured out from his body. It whistled out, and the temperature of the entire courtyard dropped by dozens of degrees. Everyone's complexion changed. The hands of the low-level martial artists holding their weapons trembled. Everyone subconsciously retreated 7 or 8 steps, opening up a path. Yi Qinghan didn't care. He turned a blind eye to them and directly led Blue Rain out, not even glancing at the martial artists on either side. The dozens of martial artists outside the courtyard were all filled with divine power, but no one dared to make a move. The guard commander wanted to shout a few times, but in the end he didn't dare to do so, because he knew that if he dared to make a move, he would be the first to die. Dozens of people surrounded Yi Qinghan's group of 3, but they didn't dare to attack. Yi Qinghan walked forward, and they followed, all of them glaring at him menacingly. It was a very strange scene. Swish, swish, swish. Countless air-rending sounds rang out from all directions as countless figures tore through the air. As one of the 3 major families of the Nanling continent, the Lan family was a large family with countless experts and hundreds of elders. There were also more than 10 peak 7th-grade martial artists and countless 6th and 7th-grade war gods. The moment they heard that someone wanted to forcefully take Miss Blue Rain away, they were all alarmed and rushed over immediately. Who are you? Let go of the young mistress. Your Highness, quickly retreat. Let go of the young mistress. Your Highness, young mistress. However, when they rushed over and saw the scene, no one dared to make a move. This was because everyone knew that this person was a supremacy. Furthermore, although he was holding Blue Rain's hand, it didn't seem like her divine crystal had been sealed. As for Cherry Blossoms, she was giggling as she followed behind, as though she was watching the show. Why did it look like she was being held hostage? Yi Qinghan decided not to walk any further. He quietly stood in the square in front of Blue Rain Court, waiting for the important figures of the Lan family to arrive. Wong! A figure appeared out of thin air. It was a supremacy from the Lan family. He was an elder with white hair, but his face was radiant like a baby's. He swept his gaze across Yi Qinghan and listened to the voice transmission report beside him. He coldly said, Who are you? You are definitely not from Nanling City? And who are you? Yi Qinghan did not even look him in the eye as he said arrogantly. His haughty manner stirred the experts of the Lan family. They nearly took action. The elder swept his cold gaze across the crowd. Instantly, there was dead silence. It was apparent that he was an impressive figure in the Lan family. He glanced at Blue Rain and Cherry Blossoms and did not flare up. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, I'm the Grand Elder of the Lan family, Supremacy Blue River. May I ask who you are? When Yi Qinghan noticed that Blue River was rather polite, he looked him in the eye. He converged his killing intent and said nonchalantly, Get your patriarch to come out and speak. I'll give Blue Rain face. Blue River's expression changed once again. He had spoken in a subservient manner, but he still received such a reply. So, what if you were a supremacy? The Lan family had 2 supremacies. The patriarch was a peak supremacy. The Lan family had stood proudly in the Nanling continent for millions of years. When had they ever suffered such humiliation? However, when he saw Blue Rain's nonchalant expression and Cherry Blossom's starry eyes, he fell silent for a moment. When he swept his gaze across Yi Qinghan again, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly said to the people beside him, Quickly invite the patriarch out of seclusion. There's no need. I'm here. At that moment, a figure appeared out of thin air. He was also dressed in blue robes and looked middle-aged. He had an aquiline nose and a cold gaze. It was obvious that he was a ruthless and ambitious figure. "Greetings, Patriarch." The hundreds of warriors present knelt down. Even Blue River bowed slightly. As for Blue Rain, they subconsciously wanted to kneel, but were lifted up by Yi Qinghan's divine power. Cherry Blossoms nodded at the person as a form of greeting. Everyone looked at the Lan family's patriarch with reverence and reverence. It was clear that this person's prestige in the Lan family was extremely high. However, to everyone's astonishment, the Lan family's patriarch actually took 2 steps forward and knelt down on one knee toward Yi Qinghan. He respectfully said, "Lan Tian greets the frigid night's sovereign." Wow! The crowd was in an uproar as they looked at the Lan family's patriarch in disbelief. Then, they suddenly came to their senses. When they saw Yi Qinghan's face, they were all frightened. They hurriedly knelt down and shouted in unison, "Greetings, frigid night's sovereign." Blue River had actually seen through it a moment ago. At that moment, he knelt on one knee with a bitter expression. Not only him, but all the kneeling warriors also became bitter and fearful. They had long heard that after Blue Rain appeared in the Sealed God Valley, their first appearance was in Flame Dragon City. Furthermore, they had an ambiguous relationship with the Flame Dragon City Lord. However, rumors were rumors. Blue Rain had the strength of a 7th-grade war god. At that time, Yi Qinghan was just a minor divine king. No one thought that the two would get together. They didn't expect that they were wrong. Not only did the two of them get together, but from the looks of it, they had been together for a long time and were very deep. Thinking of everything the Lan family had done for Blue Rain over the years, thinking of Blue Rain's impression of the Lan family, and most importantly, thinking of the means of this young man in front of them, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This lord was a murderous demon king, a demon in human form, a ferocious person who could kill dozens of supremacies with a single slap. And their Lan family only had 2 supremacies. If he were to slap Su Immortal Abode in a fit of rage, even the South Mountain Sovereign wouldn't say anything, right? "Get up," Yi Qinghan said calmly, but his gaze was on Blue Rain. Seeing Blue Rain gently shake her head, he leisurely said, "I'm taking Blue Rain with me. I will settle this matter. Make way." Chapter 997. Wait! Blue Sky didn't say anything, but Blue River anxiously shouted. Then, he bowed to Yi Qinghan again. "Monarch, we have no objections to you taking Blue Rain away. But if the South Mountain Monarch investigates this matter, the Blue family will be annihilated." "Blue Rain, I know you have some misunderstandings about the Blue family, but the Blue family's blood flows in your veins. You can't just watch as the Blue family is destroyed." Lan Yu looked at Blue River, whose eyes were filled with pleading, and at the silent blue sky, as well as the family's elders who were bowing and fawning at her. She felt it was ironic. She sneered and spoke for the first time since leaving the loft. "The Blue family's blood? You don't know, but what I hate the most is having the Blue family's blood in my veins. My father had the Blue family's most orthodox bloodline, but what happened to him in the end? He lived a life worse than a dog in the Blue family. When I became a soul cultivator, your first thought wasn't that a genius had appeared in the family, right? You brought me to Nanling City and swayed around in front of the princes, afraid that I wouldn't be able to get married? Without your consent, would Lonely Ing have been able to silently kidnap my parents in Suxianju? What am I in your eyes? Am I a commodity? A commodity that will solidify the Blue family's position? Have you ever treated me like a person? Have you ever cared about my feelings? I am also a person." Blue Rain's voice was very calm, but it was like a slap to the Blue family's faces. Blue Sky's expression didn't change, but a hint of guilt flashed in his eyes. As for Blue River, his body emitted a baleful aura, but he stealthily retracted it. He lowered his head, as if to hide the anger in his heart. Cherry's eyes reddened as she held Blue Rain's hand tightly. She sympathized with Blue Rain's predicament, or else she wouldn't have been so intimate with Blue Rain. At the same time, her face revealed a sense of helplessness. To outsiders, being in a rich and powerful family made them look glorious and mighty. But how many people knew how much helplessness and filthy things were hidden under their bright and beautiful appearance? Blue Rain did not cry. Instead, he grabbed Yi Qinghan and Cherry Blossom's hands tightly as he looked at the experts and elders around him with pride. She was actually a very emotional person. She often cried, but she felt that she could cry alone in front of her parents and her man. However, he could not do it in front of these people because they were not worthy. Yi Qinghan didn't say anything. He just looked at the blue sky coldly, as if waiting for his explanation. Blue Sky Wooden Pipe dodged a little, did not speak, and fell silent. On the side, Blue River was a bit anxious. He lifted his head, and the anger in his eyes disappeared. With an awkward smile, he bowed and nodded his head. It's all my fault. Blue Rain, Second Grandpa has let you down. You have to understand that everything Second Grandpa did was for your own good. Shut up. If you say another word, I'll kill you. A cold shout suddenly rang out, rudely interrupting Blue River's words. It was incomparably rude and even contained a threat. The expressions of all the experts of the Lawn family changed once again. Even Blue Sky's expression darkened slightly. Blue River's eyes were filled with anger, but he didn't dare say a word as he looked at the owner of the voice. Yi Qinghan looked at Lawn River in disdain. He didn't care about the expressions and gazes of the Lawn family's experts. He said coldly to Lawn Tian, "The South Mountain Sovereign can destroy your Lawn family. I can do the same. Cherry Blossoms, leave. Go to South Mountain City." Accompanying Yi Qinghan's words was a cold air that resembled the extreme north of the celestial world. Under Yi Qinghan's surging killing intent, the hundreds of experts from the Lawn family felt their souls turn cold. They were alarmed. This homicidal demon king was indeed, as the rumors said. How many people did he have to kill to have such a terrifying killing intent? Yi Qinghan brought Cherry Blossoms with him as he slowly walked towards the entrance of Su's immortal abode. He no longer looked at Blue Sky, Blue River, and the others. All the experts of the Lawn family looked at Yi Qinghan in fear. They hurriedly gave way and watched as Yi Qinghan and the others disappeared from their sight. Patriarch, this frigid night sovereign is too unreasonable. After Blue River saw Yi Qinghan off, his expression suddenly changed. His face was filled with malevolence as he spoke to Blue Sky furiously. "Pa!" His reply was a resounding slap. Blue Sky's killing intent surged as he glared at Blue River coldly and roared, "You idiot! Are you not comfortable until you kill the Lawn family? Scram to the back of the mountain and go into seclusion for 100 years. Scram!" Seeing the furious Blue Sky, Blue River was afraid. He dejectedly teleported away. All the other experts of the Lawn family knelt down and prostrated on the ground. They kept quiet out of fear and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Send someone to notify Lonely Cherry that Lan Yu and her parents have already been expelled from the Lawn family. Her matter has nothing to do with the Lawn family. Also tell him that Yi Qinghan took Lan Yu to Nanling City. Lan Yu, you will temporarily lead the Lawn family. I will go meet the sovereign and personally explain things. Blue Sky quickly gave a few orders and disappeared from the scene. Su's immortal abode. Yi Qinghan brought Lan Yu and Cherry Blossoms and flew towards the teleportation formation. Lan Yu pulled Yi Qinghan's hand with a face full of happiness. Cherry Blossoms stood to the side with a face full of excitement. It was as if the place Yi Qinghan was going to cause trouble was not her own family. Yi Qinghan's body trembled as the gray armor on his body turned to dust. He twisted his body and said with a smile, "Lan Yu, don't worry. It's nothing serious. I will handle it." Lan Yu nodded her head forcefully. Yi Qinghan's dominance had completely conquered her. Which woman didn't wish for their man to be powerful and domineering? Moreover, it was a powerful domineering display for him. Brother-in-law, why didn't you teleport us?" Cherry Blossoms suddenly asked. She had always been curious about this, but didn't dare ask. Now she couldn't help but ask. Yi Qinghan looked at Empress Rain with a face full of doubt. He whispered with a smile, "Actually, I don't know how to teleport." "Ah?" The two of them exclaimed in shock. Then, they recalled what Yi Qinghan had said in Blue Rain Court and seemed to understand. They looked at Yi Qinghan with strange gazes. This person was truly a freak. The number one freak in the celestial realm. Su's residence was not far from Su Immortal City Square. Moments later, the trio flew to the side of the teleportation array. Clearly, the situation inside was unknown to those outside. There was no commotion, and very few people in blue rain knew Cherry Blossoms. However, Cherry Blossom's appearance caused many people to fall to their knees. Yi Qinghan did not say a word, but Cherry Blossom spoke up indifferently, gesturing for them to activate the teleportation array. With a flash of white light, the trio appeared in South Mountain City. However, the atmosphere in South Mountain City was somewhat odd. There were nearly no pedestrians on the square, but there were several times the number of guards. Furthermore, every guard looked unfriendly. There were also countless sounds of people tearing through the air. Clearly, there were countless warriors rushing over. News sure travels fast. Yi Qinghan smiled faintly and thought nothing of it. He ignored the watchful eyes of the guards around him and flew straight for City Lord Manor with Lan Yu and Cherry Blossoms. Chapter 998. The City Lord's mansion was located at the north of the plaza. When Yi Qinghan arrived at the plaza, he saw countless guards rushing towards the City Lord's mansion from all directions. Furthermore, the teleportation formation on the plaza kept flashing, and countless figures appeared. These figures flashed and disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already in front of the City Lord's mansion. Obviously, they were the venerables of the Southern Mountain Continent. The number of experts in front of City Lord Manor increased. Moments later, there were more than 10 supremacies and tens of thousands of soldiers. These people had clearly received orders as their gazes locked onto Yi Qinghan as though they were facing a formidable foe. Is Solitary Ing a fool? He actually gathered so many people. Is there any use in numbers? If these people knew of your identity, they probably wouldn't dare come, right? Lan Yu said with a sneer. The Lan family was a large family clan, and her strength was not weak either. Of course, she knew that no matter how many people there were, they would be sending themselves to their deaths in front of a will. There was no difference between one supremacy and 100 supremacies. Cherry Blossoms was puzzled as well. These people clearly did not know of Yi Qinghan's identity. They had only rushed over after receiving orders. She said in puzzlement, "That's right. Why is the family head so foolish?" He's not foolish, Yi Qinghan said with a faint smile. He ignored the countless murderous gazes and explained. He gathered these people to lure South Ridge Sovereign out. If I were to smack so many supremacies to death, the South Ridge continent would suffer a huge blow. Once South Ridge Sovereign learns of this, he will have no choice but to appear. This, Little Han, what do we do? Lan Yu was a little flustered. After all, South Ridge Sovereign was a powerful existence that had been famous for 1,000,000 years. Yi Qinghan had just broken through to the 9th grade, and he did not even know how to teleport. She was obviously worried. Don't be afraid. Watch me. Yi Qinghan smiled calmly and patted Lan Yu's palm. With the two of them, he flew into the sky and stopped 1,000 meters in front of City Lord Manor. He amplified his divine power and roared, "Solitary Ing, get out here! Solitary Ing, get out here! Get out here!" Yi Qinghan's powerful god power amplified his voice. Although there were many people in front of the City Lord's mansion, it was completely silent. Although there were millions of residents watching from around the square, none of them dared to make a sound. The moment Yi Qinghan bellowed, he felt as though a clap of thunder had exploded in Nanling City. The huge echo reverberated in the square for a long time. Blue Rain and Cherry Blossoms were dumbfounded as they exchanged looks. Yi Qinghan actually attacked directly, and it was the most barbaric declaration of war, leaving no room for maneuver. The tens of thousands of official army soldiers and more than a dozen venerables in front of the City Lord's mansion were also dumbfounded. On the other hand, the martial artists and residents around the square were shocked. Many of them trembled, and many even burst into tears from excitement. How many years has it been? How many years had it been since he had seen such a shocking scene? There was actually someone at the South Mountain Square, asking the South Mountain City Lord, the head of the Ing family, the favorite descendant of the South Mountain Sovereign, to come out. This is 2F asterisk King exciting. Who was this azure-robed man? This question instantly lingered in the minds of all the warriors present. No one was a fool. Loaning Cheng's order was very strange. Furthermore, this person clearly knew that Loaning Cheng wanted to deal with him, yet he had swaggered to City Lord's mansion and shouted at it. This meant that he was not a fool, but an expert, a pinnacle expert. If he wasn't a pinnacle expert, who would dare shout here? Furthermore, this person looked familiar to countless people. After Yi Qinghan shouted, the image in countless people's minds instantly overlapped with the person in front of them. Most of the people present had never seen the portrait before, but with a thought, they guessed the person's identity. The number of people in the divine world who could curse here could be counted on 2 hands. At that moment, there were more than a dozen supremacies in front of him, and the Ying family supremacies had yet to take action. And this person did not appear to be a fool. That meant that he disregarded supremacies. In other words, he was more impressive than supremacies. He was a monarch, an invincible 9th-grade war god, and the monarchs of the divine world had always been elusive. They rarely appeared in front of the public, let alone shouted in front of everyone. The only explanation was that he was the youngest monarch of the divine world, that hot-headed monarch Qin, the one who killed without batting an eye, the one who never played by the rules, frigid night monarch. Around the plaza, more and more people began to cry. They were too excited. Monarch. For low-level warriors like them, being able to see a supremacy was already an honor. Now, they could actually see the youngest, most legendary, and most murderous monarch in the history of the divine world. Furthermore, it seemed like they could personally see a monarch in action. Whoosh! In midair, the space fluctuated and 5 figures appeared out of thin air. The main character had appeared. Greetings, frigid night monarch. The 5 people stood in a straight line with Yi Qinghan. Although the 5 of them said greetings, they only casually cupped their hands and did not bow. Their expressions were cold. Especially the supremacy at the very front. His eyes were fixed on Lan Yu, who was beside Yi Qinghan. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Greetings, frigid night monarch. The warriors below woke up and knelt down on one knee. Although they understood that this person had a grudge against lonely Ing Cheng, they subconsciously treated him as an enemy. However, a monarch was the pinnacle of warriors. As a warrior, they still had to show respect and courtesy to the strongest of the warriors. Wasn't the battle not starting yet? Yi Qinghan coldly sized up the supremacy at the very front. Solitary Ing had a dignified appearance. His dark blue hair was tied into a scholar's bun, and he wore a gorgeous golden robe. Every movement he made was filled with a domineering aura. Unfortunately, the gloominess in his eyes caused his entire temperament to change. Without wasting any words, Yi Qinghan said tyrannically, "Hand over Lan Yu's parents, and this matter will be over. Otherwise, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." Countless people's eyes locked onto Lan Yu, who was beside Yi Qinghan. They all understood the cause of this matter. Since ancient times, femme fatale. Back then, Monarch Tianqi Imo Shanghuang started a massacre because of a woman from the bewitching demon race. The matter between lonely Ing Cheng and Lan Yu had already spread throughout the South Mountain continent. Recently, they were even preparing for their wedding. No one expected that a man would appear out of nowhere. Moreover, it was the legendary frigid night monarch of the divine realm. The gloominess in lonely Ing Cheng's eyes intensified, but he didn't panic at all. He cupped his hands and said, "Frigid night monarch, are you mistaken? You are the one who should release my fiancée. Lan Yu and I have been engaged for a long time. This is something that everyone in the divine realm knows. As for uncle and auntie, as the son-in-law, lonely Ing Cheng naturally treats them as esteemed guests. Could it be that frigid night monarch wants to use his strength to forcefully snatch my wife?" Lonely Ing Cheng's words were logical and reasonable. He used the sad card and even put on a hat at the end. His words were extremely incisive. You. Empress Rain's expression changed, and she trembled with anger. Although she knew that lonely Ing Chung was distorting the truth, she didn't know what to say to refute him. Although not everyone in the divine realm knew about her engagement with lonely Ing Chung, everyone in the South Mountain continent knew about it. You want to play with this young master? This young master grew up playing with this. Blue Rain, back off. Leave everything to me. The corner of Yi Qinghan's mouth revealed a trace of a smile as he laughed lightly. He patted Empress Rain's shoulder and had her back off. Only then did he stare at lonely Ing Chung with a smile for a long time. He stared at lonely Ing Chung until his hair stood on end. Only then did he say, Bullsh *T. As expected, Yi Qinghan once again didn't play by the rules. He didn't care about his identity as a monarch and acted like a street hooligan as he directly burst out with vulgarities. The might of this move was huge. Everyone present was stunned and scared silly. More people burst into tears. Big brother? He could play like this? Yi Qinghan didn't care about the crowd. He extended his index finger and pointed at lonely Ing Cheng's face arrogantly. He scolded, You say you have an engagement with Blue Rain. So you think you have an engagement? Call the Blue family's patriarch out and see if there's an engagement. Blue Rain and I got to know each other in Seal God Valley and spent a long time together. Why didn't you save her at that time? If it wasn't for this young master, would Blue Rain have left Seal God Valley? You little dog, have you gone crazy thinking about women? You dare to steal my woman? Just one word. Are you going to hand her over or not? This young master dared to kill one. 3 billion people. I don't mind carrying more blood on my back. This young master will count to 3. If you don't hand her over, I will kill without mercy. Chapter 999. Before Yi Qinghan could finish his words, countless people were already sweating profusely. When he finished his last sentence, countless people began to tremble. Who the hell was this? This was a legendary monarch? This mother** king bastard was simply a bandit, calling the Lan family to confront him. If he could bring someone from the Lan family out, it clearly meant that the Lan family did not want to offend either side. If he offended either side, wouldn't he be annihilated? He had spent a long time with Blue Rain and Seal God Valley. It sounded like the two of them had been together for tens of thousands of years. Actually, many people and families had seen Yi Qinghan's information and knew that Yi Qinghan had only stayed in Sealed God Valley for a few decades. His last sentence was even more unbearable. He directly used his monarch status and his peak strength to suppress others. He did not speak politely and directly started killing. Most importantly, his words could not be refuted. Did he call the Lan family to confront him? Did he not bring Blue Rain out from Sealed God Valley? He even dared to kill one. 3 billion people. This was not just to scare people. At this moment, the seawater outside the Seoul Emperor Pavilion was even redder than elsewhere. Countless people looked at Yi Qinghan in worship. What was domineering? This was domineering. There was no logic in the divine world. The fist was the strongest. The iron rules of the divine world were even more unbearable. Those were rules created by several big shots. How could the rules control the people who made the rules? The countless warriors in front of the city lord's mansion and the dozen or so venerables started to panic when they saw the killing intent that Yi Qinghan was slowly releasing and the sharp gaze of a sword. They started to curse lonely Ing Chung in their hearts. If they still did not understand that lonely Ing had sent them here to make Yi Qinghan feel apprehensive and make the South Mountain sovereign appear, then they were all pigs. But Yi Qinghan dared to slap dozens of supremacies to death. Would he care about a dozen supremacies? The South Mountain sovereign hadn't appeared for a long time, and everyone's hair stood on end. As Yi Qinghan counted to 1, more than half of the supremacies wanted to teleport. The martial artists nearby were all excited. Their eyes were wide open, afraid to miss even a second. A battle between sovereigns. To be able to see his mother once in a lifetime, it was worth it. 2. Yi Qinghan stretched out 2 fingers, and his killing intent became even stronger. At the same time, he began to transmit a message to Yao Ji. The Dream Palace was a very special divine artifact. The coordinates to enter the god realm were not fixed. Instead, wherever Yi Qinghan was, the enchantress would be able to instantly lock onto that coordinate. Cherry blossoms, are you sure you don't want to leave the South Ridge continent? After the transmission, Yi Qinghan began sending cherry blossoms a voice transmission. Cherry blossoms stood behind him the entire time without wavering. And strangely, after Lonely Ying and company appeared, none of them gave cherry blossoms a glance. It was as though she wasn't a member of the Ying family. Or perhaps they felt that the Ying family would lose face if they stood against the Ying family with someone else. I'm actually no different from the Ying family side relatives. After my father died in battle, the Ying family no longer treats me as a prince. Cherry Blossom's voice transmission was very desolate, and there was even a hint of sarcasm in it. Ever since the Soul Emperor Pavilion, all her subordinates had betrayed her and become the bald commander. She had lost all hope for the Ying family. All right, don't resist. Blue Rain, don't worry. Uncle and Annie, I will definitely bring them to your side safely. Yi Qinghan turned his head and gave Blue Rain a resolute look. Blue Rain and Cherry Blossoms nodded before vanishing without any warning. Following that, Yi Qinghan slowly turned his head and looked at Lonely Ying. He bellowed, one word. Are you going to hand them over or not? Lonely Ying remained silent as his eyes turned even more sinister. The corners of his mouth even suffused a cruel smile. For a person to enter seclusion for hundreds of thousands of years for a woman, going from the godly monarch realm to the high-grade supremacy realm, it could be said that his personality had changed. Death was nothing to him. Most importantly, he wasn't a fool. He believed that the South Ridge Sovereign would definitely not watch as more than half of the South Ridge continent's experts were wiped out by Yi Qinghan. Therefore, he said no. With the two words, Lonely Ying Chung, all the supremacies had a change in expression. Even the four supremacies from the Ying family wore looks of horror. The army that numbered in the tens of thousands was in even worse states. Countless people began to tremble because Yi Qinghan had vanished. What replaced it was a pressure that seemed to come from the nine heavens. Everyone's body sank slightly. Solitary Ying and the other four were all pressed down. The moment the five of them landed on the ground, the bluestone bricks on the plaza shattered into countless pieces. A gigantic face appeared in the sky. The gigantic face seemed very clear. The eyes were the eyes, the nose was the nose, and the mouth was the mouth. However, it looked very blurry. Although one could see it clearly, one could not retain the memory of this face in one's mind. With the appearance of this gigantic face, even the wind stopped blowing across the entire South Ridge city. It was as if black clouds were pressing down, suffocating everyone. This massive pressure did not just press down on the bodies of the martial artists in the city, but also directly pressed down on their souls. This feeling was like an ordinary person facing a demonic beast that was dozens of meters tall. They felt so tiny and powerless. Willpower. This was the power of willpower. Under the envelopment of willpower, space was frozen. Everyone could only think, but they could not move. They could not even breathe. Under willpower, no one could stop it. These words were not empty words. At this moment, the tens of millions of people in the city truly felt the heavenly might of willpower. Heavenly might could not be resisted. He really dared to make a move. This was the first thought that came to the minds of all the martial artists in South Ridge City. This time, not only did the martial artists and supremacies in front of the city lord begin to feel fear, even the souls of all the martial artists in the city began to tremble. Everyone knew that when the frigid night's sovereign's palm struck down, not even a single divine crystal was left behind for one. 3 billion people. And there were only tens of millions of people in South Ridge City. Under this oppressive might, even lonely Ying Cheng's confidence began to waver. He had always thought that he was not afraid of death, but ever since he became the king of South Ridge City, he began to enjoy the endless benefits that authority brought him. His mentality began to change subtly. At this moment, he suddenly felt an inexplicable fear. How could he die like this? No, absolutely not. Countless supremacies began to regret. If they had known this would happen, they would have teleported away. After all, Their lives were their own. But everyone knew that it was too late. The pressure in the sky was becoming increasingly heavy. That mountain-like spatial power seemed as if it would come crashing down in the next second. It would crush them to pieces. Humph! A faint, cold snort suddenly resounded in the sky like the gospel of a savior. Following this cold snort, the massive pressure above South Ridge City melted away like snow. It felt as if dark clouds were pressing down and a storm was about to descend. But as the sun shone down, the skies suddenly cleared up. When the pressure faded away and everyone regained control of their bodies, they felt their backs drenched in sweat. Their faces revealed the joy of surviving a calamity. No one could care about wiping the sweat off their faces. Their gazes all locked onto the northern part of the city, locking onto a giant face that had suddenly appeared. This was a giant face that was even more domineering and arrogant than Yi Qinghan's. At this moment, everyone began to tremble. They knew that their guardian god had arrived. Their true king had arrived. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.